Welcome to our trash revolution.
Everything's computer.
How terrific.
They can
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Antichrist with you guys. We're gonna have an excellent show for you, all right? So number one, we're gonna do 2 hours of news. You win. Number two, we're gonna do Operation Joy. It's gonna be public for everyone because we're doing all the revolution stuff. We're gonna do all the crowdsourcing the revolution Monday through Friday, except on Tuesday, where Operation Joy is immovable. But it will be available to everyone, so congratulations, you all get joy. And then
you're welcome.
Yeah, right. And then old school at 9:30 tonight for our members. Okay, so lots to get to, including you're going to be shocked. I hope you're sitting down. Turns out Israel has violated the ceasefire on day one. No one could have seen coming. I know, right? But we'll get to that in a minute. Casper, what are we starting with?
Well, look, let me just tease that story a little more. There are allegations that it's really Hamas who broke the ceasefire. We're going to get into the nuances of that story and more, so definitely stick around for that. And I don't in any way celebrate the fact that it appears that this ceasefire isn't going to hold, because I want people to live in peace. But just stick around for that story. I spent a lot of time researching it because the reporting has been total dog crap on it. So I had to do a lot more research than usual to figure out what was going on. Anyway, I figured we can start with a video that caught my attention. It was sent to me by super producer Kate Patino, and it has to do with Senator Cory Booker. So let me set this up. Jennifer Welch, who's the host of the I've Had It podcast, had a special guest on her program, Senator Cory Booker, a Democratic senator, and she asked him an important question about, foreign policy, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, and more. Let's hear what he had to say.
Do you think he's a war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think he's a war criminal?
Again, these are questions that a lot of people think are the important litmus tests that are loaded and hot. My urgency is to be an effective leader in bringing an end to this crisis. And I get these questions all the time that, to me, undermine my urgency.
I think the thing that Democrats get so frustrated with, where we are right now, where you see like the Zoran Mamdanis and the Graham Plattners rise up, because they can go on podcasts and you can say, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal? And they just say, yes. And that's the end of it. It's not all of the rhetoric answering. It's like what happens to Democratic politicians, they go through this like prism, and then we can't ever get like the answer to yes or no conversations like you do with Bernie and others. And that's the frustration for the Democratic base with leadership. Do I think Netanyahu is worse than Trump?
Yes.
Do I think Netanyahu is worse than Trump? Yes, that wasn't the question. The question was, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal? And as you can see, Cenk, he avoided answering that question. And I can get into the reasons why this Democratic senator avoided answering that question, even though there's an abundance of evidence indicating that he broke international laws and engaged in war crimes and is in fact wanted by the International Criminal Court due to the war crimes he has committed. But what did you make of what Cory Booker had to say? Maybe we're misunderstanding him. Maybe we're not giving him credit for his urgency in pursuing peace in the Middle East. What do you think?
Yeah, so Cory Booker and I will be the exact opposite, because Cory Booker loves word salad. Did you see that in the beginning there? Yes. Because of the urgency of the question, that's why I need to not answer it and do the urgency of leadership. And what are you talking about? And what urgency of leadership are you doing other than hiding behind people while taking a picture with Netanyahu? He literally did that. And hiding his record, hiding his real beliefs. He doesn't have any real beliefs. Okay, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be blunt. So Cory Booker is corrupt and works for Israel. That is super obvious, and we're going to prove it to you. We're going to show you, receipts for how much money he's taken from AIPAC, etc. But look, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is the same answer every time. Mainstream media will not show you that clip. They will not criticize Cory Booker for that at all. They will try to hide that clip from you. They'll try to make sure that you don't find out how much money Cory Booker has gotten from the Israeli lobby, and that you never connect his votes and his lack of urgency, if you will, to borrow a phrase from Cory Booker about this issue, with the fact that he's being legally bribed by the Israeli lobby. That's what's happening. He's a crook, and almost all of mainstream media is a crook, and they all work for Israel. So, but go ahead, Anna.
Well, look, I think you're right in regard to how the American corporate media covers this very topic, how they really avoid weighing in on the corrupting factors in our federal government. And so you're right about that. But one thing that I will just point to is the fact that there has been this long-standing illusion of real disagreement among the two political parties on everything. And the fact of the matter is there are disagreements among the two political parties. I think immigration policy is probably the most substantive area in which there is disagreement between the two parties. But putting that aside, when it comes to questions of foreign policy, I don't think it's really rare to find Democratic lawmakers who are just as hawkish as Republican lawmakers. And that's, in my opinion, not due to, their values or their deep-seated principles. I think it has far more to do with the fact that we have legalized bribery in this country, the very thing that you get angry about and talk about on the show on a regular basis. And I want to give ordinary rank and file Americans, regardless of where they stand in the political spectrum, a lot of credit, because the transition away or the moving away from corporate media, from legacy media, also was not an accident. The fact that you have cable news dying, the fact that you have traditional network news like CBS dying is because Americans don't trust those institutions anymore because they've been discovered to not tell you the full story, or essentially stick to a specific narrative that suits the interests of the elite and the powerful. And so just to give you guys a little more background information, AIPAC Tracker says that Cory Booker has received close to $900,000, $871,563 from the Israel lobby to be exact. And if you guys can remember, 6 years ago, back in 2019, March of 2019, The Intercept had reported on a leaked recording in which Cory Booker said that he and the AIPAC president text message back and forth like teenagers. You must be so proud. Now, with that in mind, luckily Welch asked Booker about the money he has taken from AIPAC. I actually haven't seen this video yet, and I'm super jazzed that we have it. So let's see how he answered that question.
I have disagreements with a lot of people. Look, I'm one of a handful of people that don't take corporate PAC money. I don't understand my Democratic.
What about AIPAC money? You take AIPAC money, don't you?
A minuscule percentage of my resources come from.
I read it's like 800,000.
Yeah, but that's a lifetime number of raising tens of millions of dollars. Let me give you the right stat. The majority of my money comes from small dollar contributions. My last report, I think 76% of it came from people that gave $25 or less. So this to me is about, again, we could pick at each other, or we could do what we need to be doing right now.
You think we don't know that dirty deeds are done dirt cheap, Cory Booker? And I'm sorry, but close to $1 million, $900,000, that's not a small amount of money. The fact that he's trying to convince the American people that taking close to $1 million in bribe money really has no impact on where you stand politically is laughable to me. And when you couple that with the fact that he was caught in a leaked recording, bragging about how he texts with the president of AIPAC like a teenager, the guy knows where his bread is buttered. I don't know what he actually believes about what's happening in the Middle East. I don't know if personally, he thinks that what Netanyahu is doing is wrong, or what's been happening to the Palestinian people for many, many decades is wrong. We don't know who Cory Booker really is, because he's paid to be what you're seeing on your screen today.
Yeah, so it's much, much worse than that, Anna, because there's so many different layers to the Israeli lobby money. So there's the money they give you directly, which in this case is $871,000, which he minimizes like it's no big deal. Come on, like, oh yeah, a politician's not affected by $871,000. Get out of here. But that's actually the tip of the iceberg. If you remember the story we covered about a week ago, Larry Ellison met with Marco Rubio back in 2016 when he was running for president. And he had to pass the test of will he kiss Israel's ass enough? And then Ellison reported back to the Israeli ambassador, he has passed the test. He will basically do whatever we command him to do about Israel. And then a super PAC supporting Marco Rubio got $5 million. So if you look at the AIPAC tracker, for example, it says $1 million, a little over $1 million for Marco Rubio. But that doesn't count just the $5 million that Larry Ellison gave him in a super PAC, let alone all of the other money in super PACs, let alone all the dark money that no one can track, okay? But also on top of that, Anna, there's the money that AIPAC spends against you. So first they started spending $4 million against Andy Levin in Michigan, and then Nina Turner in Ohio. Then they started ratcheting it up. And against Jamal Bowman, they spent $20 million to defeat Jamal Bowman. So now Cory Booker is a classic cheesy politician. He knows all that. And he makes it sound like, it says $870,000. I mean, I raised so much corrupt money, tens of millions of dollars throughout my life, and I served those guys way more than I serve Israel, but come on, let's ignore it. Get out of here, man. No one believes you. You're a dog for Israel, a total and utter dog for them. So, and to be fair to Cory Booker, though, they all are, almost all of them, not Bernie, not some others, not Ro Khanna, but certainly the great majority of the Democratic senators loyally serve Israel, not America. Obviously, almost all of the Republican senators do. Not almost, all of them do. There are a couple of congressmen like Tom Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene that don't. They're free and they represent Americans. Agree and disagree on different issues, but at least they're free, okay? So, but there's one other element, Anna, that Cory Booker's perfectly aware of. That if you criticize Israel even 1%, mainstream media will rip your face off. They'll start, the Israeli thugs, pro-Israeli thugs here in America will claim that he's anti-Semitic, and then they'll go on this giant campaign. Oh, Cory Booker, anti-Semite, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, Cory Booker, terrible, terrible, bigot, hateful. And then mainstream media will pile on story after story on cable news. Is Cory Booker the worst anti-Semite since Goebbels? Right? And they'll do all of that, and he knows that. He's like, well, I don't want to get buried by mainstream media. I don't want to get buried by AIPAC and a $20 million avalanche against me. And I like the bribes they're giving me. Yeah, they're legalized, but they are still bribes. And I'm not telling you about the ones I'm getting from the super PACs and the dark money. So Cory, look, here's what you're not getting. We caught all of you. So all of your BS doesn't work at all. So go take that BS to MSNBC where they'll probably fillet you over it. Oh, you're so sophisticated, right? None of us find you sophisticated. You're just another crook.
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, I totally agree in regard to what motivates Cory Booker. It's not just the direct money he receives from the Israel lobby, but it's also, honestly, it's the fact that when she talks about the popularity of Zoran Mamdani, as we all know, Zoran Mamdani has been attacked by the mainstream media, specifically because of his views on Israel. Now, I wish they spent more time analyzing some of the policy proposals he has, because I think that's way more important than what he views in terms of the best possible foreign policy in the Middle East. He's going to be the mayor of New York City. He's not going to have any jurisdiction over foreign policy. But again, I think that his popularity also has to do with the fact that the media, the corporate media, which the American public in general really doesn't trust, continues to attack him. It only has helped Mamdani, but these like dinosaurs of the political establishment don't understand it, and they think that everything is operating as business as usual. Cory Booker is so utterly detached from ordinary Americans that he doesn't really understand how fed up people are with the fact that, well, Congress pretty much does nothing for ordinary people these days. And then on top of that, you have a government shutdown. They're still collecting our taxes. They're still collecting a paycheck, by the way. And when it comes to funding for foreign wars, well, there's no debate about that. That passes easily. Yeah, Americans are sick of it, left and right. And so we'll see how this plays for Cory Booker moving forward. But I think he's wrong in thinking that things are operating the way they previously did. If he's afraid of the media, the corporate media attacking him, well, he's got a bad head on his shoulders. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, look, last two things. He says, well, instead of spending our time picking at each other, this is what corporate Democrats always do. Shut up and obey us. We're gonna give all of your money to Israel. Oh, you're criticizing us because they're in the middle of a genocide and the guy I'm supporting and love and cherish and have supported throughout my career is a war criminal and I won't say it? Well, we're just picking at each other. But brother, you're not on our side. What do you mean each other? We don't want to fund a genocide. You do want to fund a genocide. We want you to work for America. You want to work for Israel. By the way, you also want to work for all your other donors. Have you torn the place apart, demanding that we negotiate drug prices at Medicare? You might have done some BS theatrics about it. You might have spoken out and done a filibuster literally on nothing. That stuff is going to work for 78-year-olds that watch CNN and MSNBC. The rest of us know that your filibuster was literally over nothing and that you're not doing anything to negotiate drug prices. You didn't do it when the Democrats were in charge. You didn't insist on it. You didn't insist on the minimum wage when Biden was in charge. You didn't insist on anything that is our priorities. You don't work for us. You're not on the Democratic side. You're on the side of the donor class. And we're not on the side of the donor class. So look, and that leads to the last point, which is what Anna was saying. These guys in Washington, they still don't get it because everyone they know is also corrupt. So they go to their parties and they go on TV and they go to all these things and they're like, and they play ass slap football with each other. Israel's great, isn't it? Oh, my donors are great. We're still lying to everyone, right? We're not gonna get caught. Dude, we know you're actors. You're all caught. The minute he goes online and does an interview, they ask him the simplest question, is Netanyahu a war criminal? 98% of the planet thinks he is. The other 2% live in Washington. It's actually a super easy question. He's like, well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, go try that stuff on Scarborough, okay? That stuff doesn't fly here. So just another typical greasy politician.
When we come back from the break, we'll get into where the current ceasefire stands between Israel and Hamas. Later on in the show, we'll get into some other topics, including, one of the Jewish journalists who ended up getting detained by the Israelis. We should talk about the condition she's in now that she's been released. We'll be right back.
All right, let's do some comments from TYT.com. Members, we appreciate you guys writing in. And don't forget, by the way, we got shoptyt.com doing the free Palestine collection. All the proceeds go to Palestine Children's Relief Fund. All right, don't shoot on the goalkeeper says, probably not doing Operation Joy today, but F it, I'm sharing my joy for today. My national team just kept Israel from qualifying for the World Cup. Oh, nice, brother. Can you find out who that is? He didn't write it in. Okay, got to give them a big shout out. Israel should not be allowed to compete in any international competition. If you don't want to follow the international rules, which they don't, and laws, they constantly violate international law. They constantly attack and invade their neighbors. Then of course you should be banned from all sports events. You're not part of the League of Nations. You're a pariah terrorist state, and the rest of the world should want nothing to do with you. Italy, way to go, Italians. By the way, Italians for the win in a big, big way. Italy beating Israel in soccer is not surprising, but the Italians have been all over the streets for Palestine. They can't stand that their government was sickly corrupt and serving the Israelis. So they just revolted until the government was like, okay, maybe we'll do something about the Palestinians. We'll help like an inch or two. So thank you for your uprising in Italy. We appreciate it. And thank you for kicking the crap out of the Israeli team. Although knowing the Italians is probably 1-0. Anyway, you want to look at Oh, 3-0, nice. That's one of the most goals Italy scored in a decade. They play defense mainly, that's what they're known for. Anyway, Navinik says, if you want prompt action from Crooked Cory Booker, that's a nickname. Anyway, he didn't write that, I accidentally said it. For action from Cory Booker, it's gonna cost you a pretty penny, of course. But if you give him a nice big fat check, all of a sudden Cory Booker will turn that word salad to your advantage. Georgie Girl says, Cenk, thank you for pointing out the word salad of Cory Booker. I couldn't begin to follow the circles and loops and crawling non-ideas that he started out with. Did they teach classes on that? I couldn't do that if I tried. Even if I practiced, I would need serious coaching. Yeah, in DC, they always talking like this. You see what happened? And then what happens is New York Times and CNN come and go, what a brilliant politician. Today he's so erudite and scholarly. He's so amazing. And they go, oh yes. So and then they hand out word salads to everyone. The rest of us vomit it out, but everybody in the elites love that crap. They're like, what a sophisticated non-answer. So sophisticated. Yeah. Theater goddess. Is it too much to ask to go more than a year and a half without our senators embarrassing the state? And Booker can't even use a large population of Jewish Americans in New Jersey because the vast majority disapprove of Netanyahu and his genocide. That is true. Guys, as you're gonna see in the show today too, nothing to do with Jewish Americans. Israel keeps hiding behind them, using them as human shields. No, most of the young Jewish voters in New York voted for Mamdani. So you're not representing Jewish voters, you're not representing Jewish Americans. Tons of Jewish Americans in New Jersey, even if they're still support Israel, hate Netanyahu, right? So it'd be easy for him to say it's a war criminal if you're just doing it based on the voters. No, it has nothing to do with voters. It has to do with cold, hard cash that Israel uses to bribe almost all of our politicians. Kaj says, Apex Shakur's BS did work on my uncle. I think he's 78 and loves that guy. Well, there you go. Let me guess, your uncle watches cable news nonstop. Guam will capsize Dragon says, I liked Booker when he was rescuing people from burning buildings. Not so much since he sold his soul to Israel. Now he's throwing people into burning buildings. Oh, Israel's self-defense. Give them 20 billion more to kill Palestinians. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Farouk Al-Shaikhli, Wasim Fayed, and Barry Modova. Thank you guys, we appreciate you all for joining. Now you're part of the show, that's why I read your names. And thank you for allowing us to do this show and to some degree being the voice for some of you out there as we fight back against the corruption. All right, Anna, what's next?
Well, I wanted to revisit our discussion about the very fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and it is in fact incredibly fragile, so much so that you now have both sides accusing each other of essentially violating it. So let's get to the details.
The Israelis have already de facto annexed Gaza and de facto annexed the West Bank. Their principal goal now is to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians out of those two areas. The idea of ethnically cleansing Greater Israel has been wired into Zionism from the very beginning.
Legendary political scientist John Mearsheimer, the man who co-wrote the book, The Israel Lobby, unfortunately does not believe that the ceasefire in Gaza will hold. And honestly, with some of the latest developments, he has good reason to believe that the ceasefire will not hold, as both sides have already begun to accuse each other of violating the deal. Now, I want to be very precise with our rhetoric and our language when we cover this story. I made a few mistakes yesterday in referring to this as a peace deal. The fact of the matter is there hasn't been a peace deal, I want to say yet, but when it comes to a peace deal, honestly, I don't know if we're ever even going to reach that. So what we're really discussing here is a ceasefire, and the question is whether it's going to hold. Now, unfortunately, there have been more Palestinian deaths in the Gaza Strip at the hands of the IDF. The IDF has, admitted to carrying out some of these acts of violence. So as of this morning, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza says that 44 people have been killed and 29 injured in the past 24 hours as a result of Israeli attacks, taking the death toll to 67,913. And according to The Independent, seven Palestinians have been killed after Israeli forces opened fire on suspects. They say approached soldiers near an agreed upon ceasefire line in northern Gaza. So look, we have no way of confirming that. And if I had to bet money on it, I would not in any way trust what the IDF has to say. I also wouldn't just trust what Hamas has to say. But the idea that you shouldn't kill 7 people simply because they're approaching you. Remember, Palestinians are unarmed. Why is that the first response? To just shoot and kill 7 people right there on the spot, but they have confessed to that. Now, an Israeli drone strike also killed 5 people as they returned to check on their homes in Gaza's eastern Shijaya neighborhood, according to authorities. A separate strike killed 1 person and injured another near Khan Yunis. Now, if you guys can remember from our coverage yesterday, I talked a little bit about how Israel agreed that they would no longer carry out during the ceasefire any offensive military operations, that they would only carry out defensive military operations. And so the argument that they're going to make moving forward is every Palestinian that the IDF kills posed a threat. They did what they did because they were just defending themselves. But I also want to remind you all that they're still not allowing international journalists into the Gaza Strip where maybe some investigative reporting can confirm which side is telling the truth, which side is lying. And it's a terrible situation. Now, on top of that, there's the issue of the deceased hostages and the fact that Hamas has not returned all of the remains of the deceased hostages. So look, prior to the ceasefire, Hamas was in possession of the remains of 26 deceased hostages. So far, say that again, Cenk?
I think it's 28, Anna.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry. The Guardian said 26 today, but okay, that's fine. So, all right, let's go with 28. It doesn't matter. They haven't released the remains of every deceased hostage, and that has upset the Palestinians. But there's nuance in this part of the story that I want to talk a little bit about. Now, they've returned the remains of 4 of the deceased hostages. There are reports that they are planning on returning 4 more deceased hostages later tonight. So we'll wait and see if that happens. However, it's really, really important to keep in mind that if you look at the ceasefire deal that was signed by the 2 parties, right? This is the first stage of the ceasefire. There was an agreement that, look, it's going to be difficult to locate the remains of all of these deceased hostages. Some of them are buried under the rubble, for instance. And so as part of this deal in writing, it was agreed upon that Hamas might need a little more extra time to do what they are agreeing to do in returning all of the hostages, including the remains of the deceased. Families of deceased hostages, though, who are supposed to be returned to Israel as part of President Trump's 20-point plan for peace, said that they were angered that only 4, and you're right, Cenk, 4 of the 28 bodies had been returned. And the Hostages Families Forum, which is an advocacy group for the hostages and the hostage families, of course, called the failure to hand over all the bodies a violation of the agreement and called for the immediate suspension of all agreement implementation until all the remaining bodies are returned to Israel. Now, that's pretty disastrous, but I think that's the first piece of evidence we can point to when we say that the protests about ending the war wasn't really about the plight of the Palestinian people. It was really about releasing all the hostages. What happens to the Palestinians, I don't think the hostage families really care too much about, but whatever, putting that aside, a spokesperson for the forum later said that it wasn't calling for a return to fighting, but for Hamas to be held accountable to meet its obligations as part of the agreement. But they are so far meeting the obligations as part of their agreement. As Jeremy Scahill reports, during Gaza negotiations, Israel understood it would take time to recover all bodies of deceased captives. A specific mechanism for recovering the bodies was agreed. Now Israel is pretending that didn't happen so it can violate the deal and cut the agreed aid shipments in half. And in fact, that is what is happening. Israel had initially agreed to allow 600 aid trucks into the Gaza Strip. Now they're saying, okay, well, since Hamas allegedly hasn't fulfilled its promise, which again, they are trying to find the remains of the hostages, and they are actually following through with the agreement based on what's in writing. We're going to go ahead and do collective punishment and severely limit the aid that enters the Gaza Strip. And so that's what we're dealing with now. Red Cross spokesperson Christian Cardone told reporters in Geneva that not all entry points are open to get humanitarian aid inside Gaza. And that's the main issue right now. And that's what humanitarians, including the ICRC, have been calling for in the last hours, is making sure that because of the huge needs, all entry points can be open. We are still witnessing only a few trucks coming in and large crowds approaching these trucks in a way that does absolutely not conform to humanitarian standards. And the coordinator of government activities in the territories, COGAT, the Israeli military body overseeing aid flows, said the restrictions were being imposed because, quote, Hamas violated the agreement. Again, they didn't. You can read the agreement yourselves. Regarding the release of the bodies of the hostages, no fuel or gas will be permitted except for specific humanitarian infrastructure needs, the note added. And if you guys can also remember, Cenk, yesterday we were talking about how as soon as the bombing stopped, Palestinians started looking for the remains of their family members under the rubble, but it's really hard to do it because they don't have the heavy machinery necessary to get through, heavy rubble. And so they're using pickaxes, they're making do with what they have, they're using their bare hands. But if in fact you have the remains of hostages buried under the rubble, I mean, Israel can help by allowing the heavy machinery into the territory so they can, get through the rubble and find the remains of, yes, the Israeli hostages, but also innocent Palestinians who have been trapped under the rubble for who knows how long.
Yeah, so it's funny you were saying that right as one of our members wrote in Peace for Peace said, we won't provide you with equipment to remove the rubble, but you broke the peace deal by not giving us hostages buried under the rubble. Well, how are we supposed to get them, right? So that's a great point by one of our members. Embedded Dude, another member on TYT.com said, one dead Israeli hostage is worth 10,000 Palestinian people. When it comes to American media, I think that is literally true. We're going to talk about that in a second. And last member, and we do the show together with our members, so sign up now if you can, hit the join button below, etc. Wang Jun said, Israel violating the ceasefire is the biggest we told you so since the last time Israel violated a ceasefire. So now, let me break it down a little bit further. So there was 20 hostages that remained alive, 28 that were dead, right? So they returned the 20 that are alive. That's the most important thing, and I'm thrilled that those guys are back. We covered on the show yesterday, the moms, dads, girlfriends, wives in tears, and super understandable, and thank God they're back. The dead are important to their family members. I understand that. So had 28 left. They returned 4 initially. They're returning 4 tonight. So there's 20 left that are dead. But Hamas had already explained to Israel and the other people involved in the peace negotiations that they don't necessarily have them and they need to find them. In fact, I'm going to add on to what Anna said with a part I found from the Wall Street Journal. But you have to understand something, and this is important. These pieces of information are buried in mainstream media articles like the deceased are buried under the rubble in Gaza. So I read half a dozen articles before I finally found this information on the 5th page of a Wall Street Journal article, okay? So they say, quote, Hamas had communicated to mediators that it didn't know where all the bodies were, and the two sides agreed to set up an international task force to search for the remaining bodies. So Hamas has definitively not broken the deal. Now, did you see that on cable news? Did you see that as a headline anywhere? No, what I have read and seen all over mainstream media is Hamas breaks the deal, they had it coming. Hamas breaks the deal, Hamas breaks it. You're lying, you're literally lying. Or you're ignorant buffoons who are actors reading a script that your producer wrote for you and your producer is lying. You ignorant buffoons, this is important. Get it right for the first time in your lives. But nope, they're all gonna lie on behalf of Israel. And then when we say, hey, it looks like you're working for Israel, they're like, how dare you, you anti-Semite. Of course we're gonna lie on behalf of Israel. Well, then you're not news. And by the way, I say go to Israel, but Israel has way better press than we have here. Israeli press holds the Israeli government accountable way more than American press does. So now we get to how Israel is violating the deal. So look, guys, I thought it was 53% because that's what I was reading in the past. Now they're clarifying, no. Israel currently occupies 58% of Gaza. So they already stole more than half of Gaza. They're never gonna give it back. They're never gonna withdraw. Everyone who isn't stupid knows that, or ignorant, right? Well, to be fair, most are in the ignorant category. And if you're accidentally ignorant because you watch cable news or you read the New York Times, I don't blame you, right? They're just purposely lying to you over and over and over again on behalf of their beloved Israel. So they already stole all that land. And if I'm wrong and they withdraw completely, oh my God, of course I'll come out and tell you. You know why? Because I'm in the news business where we actually report things, whether it's favorable or unfavorable to our point of view. Unlike the mainstream media who hide facts from you. All right, so in this case, they say the 5 unarmed Palestinians approached the yellow line. So you have begun to approach the area of Gaza we stole from you earlier by murdering your family members. That's it, kill them all. Because we told you they were never gonna stop killing. And because the American government keeps writing them checks. Oh, you murdered more Palestinians. You violated Trump's ceasefire. Who cares? Write them another check, write them another check. And American media, oh, Israel, the Palestinian dirty savages, right? I'm so sick of our disgustingly racist media that it constantly smearing Palestinians. And of course, Israel cut all the aid in half, as Anna told you. So they're back to murdering, they're back to starving. Day one, we told you this government of Israel is a terrorist government. They're never gonna stop murdering the Palestinians. They're never gonna stop stealing their land and trying to create greater Israel. And they say it, they say they want greater Israel, and that includes Gaza as the West Bank. The only reason why that's not crystal clear to everyone in America is because the American media absolutely refuses to tell you what the Israeli government officials actually say. Like, for example, did you read everywhere? Did you see on cable news that Netanyahu said in Hebrew, as we reported yesterday, oh, the campaign's not over. He has no intention of listening to Trump's peace plan. None, zero. He said it. He said he's on a spiritual and historical mission to capture greater Israel, which includes Gaza and the West Bank. But the American media will lie on behalf of Netanyahu 2,000 times over and do their stupid propaganda as they go back to their genocide immediately.
Well, let's move on to the release of prisoners, the release of hostages, Jewish hostages, in fact, in Israel. This story blew my mind. It gives you a sense of how this really has nothing to do with Jewish people, because even when it comes to Jewish reporters, if they don't fall in line, they've got to deal with the wrath of the Israeli government. Let's get right to it.
This is Noa Avishag Schnall, released along with my colleagues from unlawful Israeli imprisonment earlier this morning, reporting for Dropsite News. I was hung from the metal shackles on my wrists and ankles and beaten in the stomach, back, face, ear, and skull.
That was Jewish journalist Noa Schnall, who in fact is a photojournalist who reported on the ground from Gaza, from the Gaza Freedom Flotilla Coalition for Dropsite News. And she is now revealing the brutal treatment she experienced while she was in Israeli detention. Now, again, I want to reiterate, she herself is Jewish, and there are many Jews, not just in Israel, not just in the United States, but all across the world, who have been protesting against the Israeli government and the way that they've been operating in Gaza, the war crimes they've been committing in Gaza and the West Bank, by the way. Now, she was born in America and is of Yemeni descent. And she was aboard the Conscience boat, joined by other journalists and medics who were headed to Gaza in an attempt to break the humanitarian aid blockade and deliver humanitarian aid. Now, Israeli forces boarded and then commandeered their ship while they were in international waters. And in total, Israel detained 145 activists who took part in the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, which set sail shortly after the global Samud flotilla. Now, Noa says, the Israelis' treatment of the detainees began right when they arrived at the port. And I want to give you a warning before we go to the next video. You're going to hear descriptions of sexual violence. So I just want to give you that warning. So with that said, let's take a look.
The brutality began immediately. We were taken through multiple levels of administration and the first of many strip searches. At least one woman has reported being physically penetrated by guards who laughed at her pain. Many flotilla members reported watching their valuables being looted by guards during bag searches. All of us had our hands violently shoved towards the ground and arms held in stress positions behind us, many with zip ties, and were led through processing and sorted into groups of men and women, then blindfolded.
So look, we've got a lot of other video to get to, and I think everything she had to say is important, so I really want to draw attention to it. But I'm gonna get your comments in a second, Cenk. Before I do, I wanna go to the first graphic here that shows you a before and after to kind of give you a sense of what she looked like before detainment and what she looks like now that she's been released.
Yeah.
And
that before detainment is not when she was in LA or anything. No, that was when she was on the ship. So
yep.
She looked like a normal person, and then they beat the crap out of her in Israel. So Israel claims that they are the Jewish state and they represent Jews across the world. And if you're like a pedophile, they'll take you in. We did a story about that before. You just say, "Oh, I'm Jewish," and by the way, some people aren't even Jewish. They just claim to convert to Judaism, and then Israel says, "Right of return," boom, and they take them in. And by the way, there's good Jewish groups in Israel fighting against that because they're like, then they come and rape our children. Why are we letting these pedophiles in, right? But Israel doesn't care about anything but the nationality of Israel. So when it comes to Jews, no, they target Jewish Americans all the time. If you're for the peace movement, they put together a list of self-hating Jews and they attack them more viciously than they even attack non-Jews. Arab Jews, they have a different problem with. I mean, this is complicated, and I don't really care about when people converted and etc. But there's this thing about how Arab Jews are more authentically Jewish because they've been Jewish throughout the entire time, etc. Now, I don't believe any of that. I don't care. If you call yourself Jewish, you're Jewish, and it's not my business, right? But for some reason, that bothers some people inside Israel. Obviously, tons of people inside Israel are also Arab Jews. So it's complicated. But so she's an Arab Jew, and they're like, "Oh, you're Jewish," and we let everybody in who's Jewish, and we pretend that we're all for Jews. Oh, but you don't like the nation state of Israel? Kick the crap out of her. Who cares that she's Jewish? Hang her from the metal shackles, beat her, and torture her, etc. They don't care. By the
way, let's be very, very clear here. There's no evidence that she dislikes the nation state of Israel. There is evidence that she wanted to do reporting on what the current Israeli government is up to. She was on that, flotilla specifically to report on the flotilla for Drop Site News. And so, look, we are, and I am, deeply critical of our government at times, right? I was very critical of our government when Biden was president. I'm critical of our government with the Trump administration. It doesn't mean I hate America. I love this country so much. Being critical of a government does not make you hate a country. Being critical of a government doesn't mean you hate all the people in said country. Yeah. So it's the fact that maybe her reporting is not to the Israeli government's liking. The fact that she was on that flotilla to do reporting on the humanitarian aid blockade, and the fact that their activists are trying to break that siege is what the Israeli government didn't like. But again, I just want to reiterate, the treatment of detainees, including Jewish journalists, is obviously, it's an abomination, it's disgusting. Imagine the way the Palestinian detainees, the vast majority of whom were never charged with anything as they were being detained. They were hostages themselves. Imagine how they were treated, right? We've done the stories about the Israeli prison guards caught on camera sexually assaulting the detainees. So these stories are real, and it's really important to draw attention to it, especially as the Israeli government boasts about how they're the only democracy in the Middle East. Let's go to the next video. In this clip, she talks about how things got worse once the people who were detained by Israel arrived at the Ketziot prison, where she says that she was targeted and subjected to the guards' brutality. According to Noa, she and other detainees were given dirty blankets and thin mattresses on the floor. And here she is describing more of the abuse that she and the others who were detained by Israel experienced.
Any flotilla member who upset the Israeli guards was subjected to twisted and tightened handcuffs, and some received beatings. I was hung from the metal shackles on my wrists and ankles and beaten in the stomach, back, face, ear, and skull by a group of men and women guards, one of whom sat on my neck and face, blocking my airways. Many comrades, understandably, do not want their identity made public when recounting this treatment. During the evening, the men were tormented by guards with attack dogs and guns. The women were threatened with pepper spray. Our cell was awoken with threats of rape.
The allegation that the detainees were threatened with acts of rape is very similar to what we've heard in the past from Palestinian detainees. And she also describes how early on in their detention, some of the detainees were brought to a trailer at the prison, and they were sat before a judge who asked if they would accept voluntary deportation in return for acknowledging what they called illegal entry into Israeli territory. Now, remember, they were detained in international waters, not Israeli territory. So they were being pressured to admit to something that they had not done. Now, to be fair, they were trying to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. So had they been detained once they got to, that area, maybe you can make that argument, but that's just not the case since they were detained in international waters. But let me just note, she was kicked out of that meeting before the judge because she was translating the events into English for the American detainees. After a few days at the prison, she and some other flotilla members were transferred to a second prison where the brutality continued. Take a look.
I was taken into solitary, as was one other woman and a few of the men. No one was allowed to see their lawyers after Ashdod port. When I demanded, one of the head guards raised his walkie-talkie to my face as if to strike and taunted in Hebrew, "Say it again."
So, look, I think that this type of testimony is really, really important. I hate that this happened to her and the other detainees. In response to Noah's story, reporter and founder of Drop Site News, Ryan Grimm, also a friend of the show, says that the state of Israel claims to be a safe haven for Jews, but in Noah's case, she was taken there against her will and brutalized. And in fact, Jewish American activist David Adler, who was part of the Global Samud flotilla, said that Israeli forces singled out Jewish activists on board for humiliation. After interception, we were violently forced onto our knees into positions of submission where the two Jews of the flotilla were taken by the ear and ripped from the group for a photo op with Israeli Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, staring at the flag of the state of Israel, taunted by his goons. Cenk.
I think a lot of Jewish Americans have no idea what's happened in Israel. They think, oh yeah, it's the lovely kibbutz and all this stuff. No, we've lost the majority of Israel to this like nationalistic cult. So every story out of a detention center from Israel is just horrific, with no regard for humanity at all. They look just like the Germans that abused Jewish people in the 1940s. And unfortunately, that idea, that fascist idea, moves from country to country to country. It has nothing to do with the Germans, or certainly not the Jews, or any other country that has unfortunately faced fascism. It isn't the ethnicity, guys, it's humanity. Unfortunately, humanity has this inside of us, and a certain power dynamic releases that, okay? And so the power dynamic is usually absolute power. Once someone has, or a country has absolute power, their chance of abusing it is absolute. So you know that old saying, and it's absolutely true. And you see it with Israel. We have enabled them, we have aided and abetted them, and that has caused them to go totally out of control and helped to push them in a fascist direction. So here we are fighting for Jewish Americans, Jews across the world. There's another story later in the show today about now the head of Palantir is calling a Jewish guy the Antichrist, but he's okay. You could abuse Jewish people, you could torture them, you could put them on a list to get them fired, canceled, etc., and no one gives a damn. It's only if you criticize or accurately report on the government of Israel that the pro-Israel goons and thugs show up. Anti-Semite, terrorists, arrest them, deport them. I'm sick of the thugs, okay? I can't stand them anymore. And do they give a ton of money to our politicians? Yes, they definitely do. Is it Jewish Americans overall? No. The great majority of Jewish Americans do not contribute to politics. But are there pro-Israel zealots in this country who have forgotten anything about Judaism and don't really care about it? All they care is they're blinded by Israel. It's become a mania for them. It's to the point where they're willing to abuse or look the other way as Israel abuses Jewish people because beloved Israel above all. I mean, Israel first doesn't begin to describe it. I think those folks have lost their minds. I think they have no idea what's happening inside Israel. They live in a fairy tale version of Israel. Right now, you go to ask Israelis, should you keep slaughtering Palestinians? Unfortunately, a majority say yes, we haven't slaughtered enough, kill them more. It's not as the 82% number that you've seen in that poll. I checked that into that. That poll is a little bit questionable, but it is still over 50%. And that's a devastating number. We've lost that culture in that country. And the way to help not just the Palestinians, but Israel is to stop enabling their worst instincts. Stop giving them money when they say, hey, I haven't murdered enough Palestinians. I haven't abused enough Jewish people. I haven't insulted the whole world. And if I haven't invaded and attacked enough of my neighbors, even though I've done it 7 times. It's our fault here in America, not the citizens. We're trying our best. Our government is so unbelievably corrupt. Corrupted by the pro-Israel zealots. They're like, no, you serve Israel. Otherwise you're gonna spend $20 million and eliminate you from Congress. Tell me you didn't do that. That's what happened to Jamal Bowman. That's what happened to Andy Levin, a Jewish representative from Michigan. They're like, he said 2-state solution. That's it, that's the official American policy. They're like, get rid of him. Okay, why? He's from a legendary Jewish family in Michigan. No, they don't care about Judaism. They don't care about the anti-Semitism. All they care about is thugs for Israel. Right? If you're gonna be a thug and you're gonna try to intimidate and bully anyone and make everyone bow their head to Israel. Well, we're not bowing our head. We're not gonna do it. And so, no, we're gonna stand with Christians, Muslims, Jews, atheists, everyone across the world. And it is the entire planet now saying, will you stop murdering the Palestinians for Christ's sake, for anyone's sake, and get the hell out of Gaza, and get the hell out of the occupied territories. You want a safe haven for Jews, that would be beautiful. Go back to 1967 borders, let's get 2 free and safe countries. We keep saying it, we want a safe and free Israel, but also a safe and free Palestine. They go, no, only us. And we're gonna get greater Israel. We're gonna crush the Palestinians. Well, then you're genocidal freaks. And it's our job to report that news. And it is news. So I don't care how many pro-Israel thugs come after us. They're dead wrong and we'll fight them to the end.
All right, we'll be right back.
And every pro-Israel thug I've ever seen thinks they're the biggest saint in the world. Like, what? I'm fighting anti-Semitism. Crush them, fire them all, they say. Okay, yeah. I see you. You're nothing but a low-grade thug. You're not fighting anti-Semitism. You're fighting for a terrorist state. So shove it. Anyway, all right. Let's go to Super Chats. Jennifer Smith writes in with a beautiful note. I would like to publicly apologize to Anna. I disliked her until recently, but I started to really listen to her perspective, and now I can't live without her.
Oh.
Wow.
That's hot. Thank you, I appreciate that, I really do.
Jennifer, you're beautifully open-minded. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's what we look for here, open-minded and open-hearted. Guys, look, you can tell that I'm tired of the thugs, right? And
I couldn't tell at all.
Yeah, I'm super tired of them. How many times do we have to say it, you morons? We want a safe, free, independent Israel as well as Palestine. But no, it's not anti-Semitic to say, stop stealing land. It's super obvious you're stealing land. You now have 58% of Gaza. Why don't you get the F out of Gaza? Prove me wrong. Prove that I'm such a big anti-Semite. Oh, you see that, Jake? We withdrew from West Bank and Gaza, and we're a beautiful nation who just wanted to be a safe haven. Prove me wrong. You won't do it. Greater Israel, right? I'm right, you're wrong. Okay, anyways, I say to those thugs that are obviously watching. Kapitan Galvazanov says, we shouldn't call them mainstream media anymore. It should be either lying, deceiving media versus honest media, and you are on the honest side. Thank you, Kapitan, my Kapitan. Appreciate you saying that, and they are a bunch of liars in mainstream media. Rage Rock for now says, that was quite the word salad from Cory Buttigieg. I mean, Pete Booker. Oh, wait. I was thinking of making a Pete Buttigieg reference too, so here. BG is a right-winger watching, God bless. He says, the commie Muslim guy is going to win because our youth have lost hope in the system and can find work. They're spitting mad, meantime, H-1Bs everywhere. So obviously I don't agree that Mamdani is a commie Muslim guy. But I do agree that, yeah, he's trying to address the real needs of New Yorkers. Meanwhile, everyone else, especially Andrew Cuomo's like, where can I pleasure an Israeli? Where's an Israeli government official? You give me money, I'll pleasure you, Brother, focus on New York, not Tel Aviv. Or why don't you get the F out and move to Tel Aviv and try to become the mayor of Tel Aviv? Nov 1775 Jim writes, and oh wow, I never realized how bad Booker wanted to lose my vote. Well, now you know. YouTube members, Balk says, drop site out here doing the Lord's work. Couldn't agree more. Love drop site news, check him out. Carol Gosh says, I think there would be few things in life worse than knowing that a loved one is dead, but cannot be found. How do you grieve and move on? Carol, absolutely. Those hostages and the family members of the deceased ones too, heartbreaking. Also, 1,700 hostages that Israel took that you never hear about because they're Palestinian and considered subhuman by the worst people in the world that work in mainstream media. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Banner Haruchai. Banner, thank you for gifting 5 memberships on YouTube. You're a rock star, brother. We appreciate you. Anna, what's next?
All right, let's talk a little bit about Ukraine because there have been some developments in regard to US foreign policy that definitely has me very concerned. I'm curious what you all think though, so let's get to the details.
It's an extreme escalatory phase, 3.5+ years in. As you know, Trump says he's strongly considering giving them long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles. And Russia has said that escalates into direct war. And they're basically calling it World War IV. The CIA called the Cold War World War III. So we are really in with all the ingredients we have with China, the North Korean troops being in Ukraine, all the different proxy countries involved. This really is a new world war. The only question is, will it continue to escalate?
It isn't every day where I can say that I agree with Alex Jones, but what you just heard him say in regard to the escalatory measures that the Trump administration is engaging in and considering doing more of is true, and we should be worried about it. Now, 2 things can be true at the same time. Trump can be pursuing escalation, which is not good. At the same time, Russia has rejected efforts to take a seat at the table and in good faith negotiate an end to this war. Now, Tucker Carlson agreed with Alex Jones's take on the Tomahawk missiles. These are long-range missiles, while making it very clear that he does not like Volodymyr Zelenskyy at all. I think that's been clear since the almost beginning of this Russian invasion into Ukraine. Trump, on the other hand, has pulled, I think it's safe to say, a complete 180 on Zelenskyy and has been very supportive of the Ukrainian president while also being critical of Putin. So we'll get to more on that later, but first, here's more from the discussion that Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones had.
Why would the US government continue to recognize Zelenskyy, who's an unelected dictator who's worked for years to destroy Christianity in Ukraine, which is a Christian country and has always been. Why would he be invited to the White House this week? I don't understand. He does not have a Democratic mandate. He's not an elected leader. He's a murderer. They've sold our weapons to some of the worst terror groups in the world. And we're treating him like he's a head of state? Like, why are we doing that?
And just a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he was back at the White House, and Trump then posted Truth Social. And I love Trump overall, but Trump started doing a 180 from saying we need to get out of this to saying, well, we're out of it, but we'll sell whatever weapons to Europe you want. And I feel like Ukraine's going to win and maybe not just get back its territory, but get more territory, meaning Russia, which is an extremely provocative and escalatory statement to Russia.
So I wanted to fact check one thing that Tucker Carlson said, because I didn't know if Ukraine is a Christian nation, but it turns out, yes, 72% of the population identified as Orthodox, as identified with the Orthodox Church. But whatever, that's an irrelevant point to this conversation. Everything else they said, I think, is interesting and worthy of a discussion. What do you make of it, Cenk? Because I honestly largely agree. Look, at the end of the day, Russia's a nuclear power, and you don't want the United States in a direct war with Russia, but we're certainly getting closer to that, especially as US military intelligence is going to be shared with Ukraine to do military operations on Russian soil, specifically to target their energy infrastructure. I think that's already entering incredibly dangerous territory. But what do you make of it?
Yeah, so this one's super complicated. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of sending the Tomahawk missiles, and the Russians have made very serious threats about that, which we'll get to in a minute. But you got to give Trump credit on one thing. Apparently, he's not working for the Russians. Look, I'll be honest, I was worried about that, and not because of the collusion in 2016 that we settled that a long, long time ago, but because him and his sons kept talking about money from Russia. He was acting so deferential to Russia, but here he is saying, I might give the Ukrainians Tomahawk missiles to strike deep inside of Russia. If you were owned by Russia, you definitely would not say that. And you would not do that, and you would not threaten that. So that seems settled now. And you have to go to where the facts are. You can't just go, okay, I don't like Trump, or I don't like Republicans, etc. Follow the facts, and they'll lead you to the right place. We're in the news business. So it's at this point, it's pretty obvious that Trump is not controlled by Russia. Am I a little surprised by that? Yeah, I am. Okay, but those are the facts on the ground. Okay, now we turn to what should we do? Well, Anna, something really strange happened when I posted about this on social media. So my account is followed by lots of different folks. Bunch of MAGA, some extreme left, some normal, our viewers who are left and independents, etc. But I'm also followed by a squadron of Israeli bots and trolls, right? So I post about, hey, it turns out Trump not owned by the Russians. Okay, I'm not sure how I feel about Tomahawk missiles, etc. Right? And they all have the same talking point. You anti-Semite. I'm like, wait, what does that have to do with Russia and Ukraine? That's already weird. But maybe they just hate me and they're like, oh, no wonder you love Russia, you anti-Semite. I'm like, no wonder I love Russia. I've told Putin to F off. We did a shirt about the, go F yourself, Russian boat or whatever. You remember that? No, the Russians invaded Ukraine. I'm for peace. So I'm against the people.
I'm calling it. Man, they're so good at telling on themselves. Russia is Iran's ally.
Bingo.
A weakened Russia by dragging on, by the way, at this point, Russia wants to continue the war, so I want to be clear about it. But there was a period of time in 2022 when Russia was kind of backed into a corner because they didn't expect the fight that the Ukrainians would put up. And so they were more open in 2022 to a peace deal. But if you guys can remember, Boris Johnson met with Volodymyr Zelenskyy and discouraged him from engaging in a peace deal. And the main motivation for the United States and the West was, well, we want to weaken Russia. But why? Like, why do we want to weaken Russia? Like, I don't see Russia as a threat to our national security. Like, and when did we suddenly decide we're enemies with Russia? Well, is it because Russia is an ally to Iran? And if you have a strong military capability with Russia, it's going to be a little more complicated if you engage in a regime change war in Iran, right?
So Anna, no, you nailed it, because the part I was getting to is they said, of course you love Russia, you anti-Semite, and of course you love Iran.
I knew it.
I was like, Iran?
That's amazing.
What does Iran have to do with Russia and Ukraine, right? And remember, it's not just one, multiple accounts, because they all use the same talking points, are all like, oh, you're in favor of Iran and Russia, et cetera, because they don't pay attention to the show. They're not paying attention to anything. They're just doing talking points because they're bots, right? Or trolls. So no, Israel wants to weaken Russia because Russia was helping Iran. And by the way, Syria. And with Russia distracted in Ukraine, Assad had no protection. And again, Assad's a bad guy, and I'm not in favor of Russia invading Ukraine because I don't have Israelitis, a thing I just made up, where you could only think about Israel. So for them, they're like, oh, must destroy Russia. They are helping Iran and Syria, must destroy them, right? Whereas I'm like, look, I judge things one by one. I didn't even know that Russia had anything to do with Israel. I mean, I get that they were allies with Iran and Syria, and we've talked about that on the show before, but I didn't think that necessarily affected the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and certainly not to this degree. But it appears that the Israeli lobby is driving America to stay in that war as long as possible, to weaken Russia so they can't help their regional allies. And Israel did in fact topple Assad, along with Turkey, by the way. And then Turkey took parts of northern Syria, and Israel took parts of western Syria. You would know that if we had real media in this country, but our national media never talks about that, and they never talk about this alliance. And so it turns out, yes, the Israeli lobby has been driving us to stay in this war.
There are few stories that enrage me more than the laundering of Al-Qaeda in Syria right now. The warm embrace of a former Al-Qaeda leader who's now the leader of Syria, as he came to the United States to be part of the UN General Assembly in New York City just recently. Like, how are people not infuriated by this? Because look, you're right. Bashar al-Assad was horrible in a lot of ways, but he was also a secular dictator, if that makes any sense. Meaning, Syria is pretty diverse in terms of religious belief, religious practices. And so part of the reason why you're seeing the internal wars breaking out within Syria between factions is due to the treatment of the Druze, due to the treatment of Christians. It's a complete and utter disaster. So the situation on the ground in Syria is unstable, to say the least. But in terms of my personal feelings about the whole matter, Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11. I don't care if you're now trying to rebrand yourself. Oh, I was an extremist Al-Qaeda member who was trying to kill Americans earlier, but I've changed my mind. I'm different now. No, I don't care. But this guy's now invited to the United States. He freaking stepped foot on US soil. It is, anyway, it makes me really angry. All right, let's move on. Now, Zelenskyy does plan to visit the White House this Friday. And according to the Financial Times, he and Trump will be discussing how to get Putin to the negotiating table. And in Trump's mind, threatening Russia by giving Ukraine long-range missiles, Tomahawk missiles, is what might get Putin to the negotiating table. But I don't think Putin is going to respond well to a threat like that. Ukraine, by the way, has wanted Tomahawk missiles since the beginning of the war, and the US government hasn't given it to them because, again, we're dealing with Russia, which is a nuclear power. And for reference, Tomahawks have a range of up to 1,500 miles. Long-range weapons that the Biden administration allowed Ukraine to use only had a range of 190 miles. And if the Ukrainian military had Tomahawk missiles at their disposal, they could strike, Russian territory. And here's what Trump had to say about the issue just yesterday.
They'd like to have Tomahawks. That's a step up. They'd like to have Tomahawks. We talked about that. And so we'll see. Well, I don't know. I might have to speak to Russia, to be honest with you, about Tomahawks. Do they want to have Tomahawks going in their direction? I don't think so. I think I might speak to Russia about that, in all fairness. I told that to President Zelenskyy because tomahawks are a new step of aggression. I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send them tomahawks. I may say that. The tomahawk is an incredible weapon, a very offensive weapon. And honestly, Russia does not need that. They don't need that. Yeah, I may tell them that if the war is not settled, that we may very well do it. We may not, but we may do it. I really think that President Putin would look great if he got this settled. And I think he's going to settle it, but we're going to see. And if he doesn't, it's not going to be good for him.
Well, a spokesperson for the Kremlin stated that tomahawks were a topic of extreme concern. And yesterday, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev wrote that it is impossible to tell the difference between a conventional tomahawk missile and a tomahawk missile with a nuclear warhead attached. Medvedev signaled Russia's response could be nuclear if Ukraine gets and fires tomahawk missiles deep inside Russia. Now, obviously, that's a threat that should be taken seriously. However, a caveat or a counter argument is that since the beginning of this war, there have been multiple instances in which the Russian government has threatened using their nukes, and obviously they haven't. That being said, this isn't something to joke around about, and those threats should be taken seriously nonetheless. At least that's my take. Cenk?
Yeah, so Trump is threatening the Russians, and this is part of how he negotiates. I don't mind that so much, and he got some sort of deal in Gaza. I mean, we knew the Israelis wouldn't abide by it, but at least got the hostages back and on a road to peace. He's trying to get to peace in Ukraine and Russia. I'm worried about the Tomahawk missiles and how you can't tell if they're nukes or not. And even if you could tell, the Russians could use it as an excuse. And so, just because you're, like, for example, I see the Israeli lobby's effect on this war now, and it makes me want to get out of the war because it turns out it's just another thing we're doing for Israel. On the other hand, I have great sympathy for the Ukrainian people, and you look, Tucker said it was a Christian nation. I don't know what that has to do with anything, right? So I would have great sympathy for them no matter what kind of nation they were. And so look, with this thing of putting the Al-Qaeda guy in charge of Syria while the Russians were distracted in Ukraine, I agree with you completely, Anna. It's a disaster waiting to happen, right? So Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi were terrible guys, but deposing them led to a giant mess. It cost us trillions of dollars, thousands of men, hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians killed in Iraq and Libya. Slavery's back in Libya. In Iran, it was even worse when we did the revolution back in the 1950s, did a coup against their democratically elected government just so that our oil companies can make more money. Well, we set them on a track to be taken over by Islamic fundamentalists. And so this constant messing around with other countries, and yes, by the way, Iran, as far as I know, didn't have anything to do with Israel back in the 1950s. But did we attack Iraq partly because Israel wanted us to? Yes, Israel said they were their #1 enemy. Iraq, Saddam Hussein, as terrible as he was, used to fight against Al-Qaeda. And he would ruthlessly kill any Al-Qaeda that was inside Iraq. And Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11. Why would we want to take out the enemy of our enemy? Because they were Israel's top enemy. So we had to do it. We were forced into it. And so and where do we get our faulty intelligence on the weapons of mass destruction? Israel. So I'm sick of this. I'm sick of all American policy, especially foreign policy, being geared towards a different country. So I'm out, okay? I don't mind Trump doing this to try to get to a good peace deal to get rescue as much land in Ukraine as possible for the Ukrainians. But then we got to wrap this up, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not fighting any more wars for Israel. That's it, I'm done with it.
And I want to be clear, look, I was very supportive of helping the Ukrainians defend themselves because at the end of the day, Russia did an invasion into a sovereign country to take territory, and that's wrong. But what frustrates me so much are the hidden motivating factors that ends up hurting everyone, including the very country that is supposed to be helped through our foreign policy, and of course that's Ukraine. But it wasn't helpful when in 2022, the West discouraged Zelenskyy to engage in peace negotiations. And that might have been the last time that we really had a real shot at a peaceful way of ending this war. So we'll see how this plays out. But it's
super last thing. So the Russians can't tell if a Tomahawk missile is armed with a nuke or not. So we're going to risk nuclear war so that Israel can topple the Iranian government easier. Nah, no, I'm all the way out. No, let's get out of there. Let's go. No more wars for Israel, period.
All right, when we come back from our break, Cenk will read some of your comments. So hurry up, write them in. We want to hear from you. We'll be right back.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Rich and powerful men abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. These rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
All those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein. They have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one.
Is Trump engaging in this cover-up because he's in the Epstein files?
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. But why are you guys so mad?
A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades?
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
In a media landscape poisoned by corporate influence, only one show stands apart from the rest, The Young Turks. As the longest running daily news show on the internet, The Young Turks is an impactful voice of unfiltered truth, one you can trust to deliver the daily news with authenticity and honesty. For nearly 2 decades, TYT has been breaking the mold of media. We're not here to echo the powerful or the elite, we're here to challenge them. Our mission is to give you accurate news, fight the establishment, and cover stories that mainstream media keeps you in the dark about, which matter to your everyday life. We've remained a leader in online news because of our established credibility with an engaged audience looking for alternative media that represents the real concerns of everyday Americans. Listen to The Young Turks, a news show that only answers to you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
How do you know if you're a populist? Easy. Do you work for the donor class? You don't? Great, you're a populist. Okay, so the establishment takes money from the donors and serves the donors. A mainstream media takes money from advertisers, and they are giant corporations themselves, and they work for themselves, and they work for the powerful. If you care about the average person, and you want the average person to have better health care, better wages, a better life, and you hate corruption, congrats, you're a populist.
I will eat your ass.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We got Operation Joy coming up. We got a lot of things coming up. But first, I'm going to read your comments. I want to thank Aaron Ivazian for joining. They hit the beautiful join button below the video on YouTube. Titan, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. Let's go to YouTube members. Concho Dongo Chim wrote in, I would like to propose organizing a boycott of vehicle rental companies that ICE uses. This would have to be a local and national, as many are franchise or chains. That's an interesting idea, and I just threw it out there to the American people. Tiffany Bluewater 2012 says, I'm not sure I'm a huge fan that the bonus episode are now basically Operation Hope every day. Tiffany, I'm keeping comments like yours in mind. Let's see how things go. And remember, at the end of everything, I am doing a little extra bonus episode, just 5-10 minutes personal story of the day for the members. So we brought that back because of folks like you saying, hey, I kind of like that part, but we're keeping it just the fun little personal stories that people like the most, okay? So check that out at the end of each of the public bonus episodes we do. Allison Auld says, Booker has bought 100. Notebook says, Anna and Cenk have been on so much lately like the old days. Anna was missing some episodes for CNN, so this is great. Thank you for appreciating having both of us on the show. Richard Flowers says, notice he says 72% comes from grassroots about Cory Booker, which means 28% comes from dark money and super PACs. No, it's actually worse than that. 28% of his personal money that he collects, not personal, but as in his office, is from much larger donors. The super PACs and the dark money are on top of that, and usually way, way more. Rebecca says, those of us standing in line at the food bank would love to get that $800,000 that Cory Booker minimized. That's the amount he got from the Israeli lobby, like it was no big deal. Stephen Early says, wow, Booker gets more money, more AIPAC money than my Democratic congressman and 2 Republican senators combined, and he thinks it's a no big deal. Average Gaming says, America's a foreign country. This is Israel West now. Worried about it. Jenny Kelly says, my friend's uncle was one of the Palestinian hostages released. Glad that they were released along with the Israeli hostages as well. Carol Gosh says, hi from Philly, this is so disappointing. I like Cory Booker. Sad day. Shower Curtain Sleeper says, I've been watching TYT for 20 years. The formula is really easy. It's the money, Lebowski. Time and time again, it shows to be the way. And that's why, again, when we talk about Israel, the issue isn't Israel as much as their power and influence in this country because of money in politics. And remember, if you don't like that, wait till you get a load of what Big Pharma has done to us and all the other lobbies have done to us. So you're absolutely right, it's the money, Lebowski. Mark Jacobs said, days old, but Glenn Beck did a panel and a lot of young conservatives were questioning Israel and his support for it. He even started sweating, it's crazy. Yeah, young conservatives. It was
so good. It was so good. I watched it today. It was, oh, I'm so proud of those young conservatives. I really am. They asked hard-hitting questions. He was sweating. He did take his jacket off at one point because of the fact that he was nervous. It was amazing. It really was.
Yeah.
Just had to put my 2 cents in there.
Yeah, no. The word is out. The awakening has begun. And so they're gonna have a lot of trouble putting that genie back in the bottle, because now we can see all the Israeli ass kissers, whether it's Cory Booker, Glenn Beck, or anything else. Now it's like, before it was like you ask a fish, how's the water? And they say, what water? Now we can see the water. So when they're out of nowhere in the middle of a genocide, they're like, oh, beloved Israel, we have to do whatever Israel says. You're like, oh, that's another one of them. Yeah, they're bought, period. Shannon says, my late husband had a huge crush on Anna. She's beautiful inside and out. Thank you for writing that in. Emre says, it takes courage to criticize Israel and report on it in America. It does, because pro-Israel thugs will try to get you fired and ruin your life. It's a 100% certainty that they will do that. And that's part of the reason why mainstream media never speaks out, because they're worried those thugs are gonna come for them. Lilith Stargaze says, excellent reporting. Thank you, Cenk and Anna. I hope Anna returns to CNN soon so she has the opportunity to discuss the disgusting treatment of the detainees. I share their grief and send them love. And last two, Darth Dunadan says, Cenk and Anna, you guys are the best news source, period. I love that you guys call out both sides. Also, thanks for sticking up for Palestinians and humanity. Thank you for saying that, brother. And Edward Sismic says, Cenk, when I feel overwhelmed by the day, I sit down to watch TYT just to mellow. And that is interesting, and I have a theory on that, and my theory is that they do that because when we are passionate about it, that it's cathartic, and they go, okay, now I feel better, right? And I hope, yeah.
I mean, look, there are a lot of different shows I watch specifically because it comes from a perspective that I don't agree with, and I want to, in good faith, understand the arguments that are being made by people who disagree with me. But I tend to also watch shows where I know, like Tim Dillon's a good example. Tim Dillon's show, for me, it just makes me feel better. It really does. And he tends to agree with me and us, on the topic of Israel, on the topic of media ownership, those kinds of things. So it's totally fine to seek out content that validates what you already believe. But the real inner work comes from listening to people who disagree with you, because it challenges you. It could make your argument sharper, but also it could change your mind. So just something to consider.
Yeah. All right, guys. And then during the next social break, I'll read more, including some folks who are members who are challenging us on Ukraine, and I want to answer those. But let's take a break here and come right back. All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat first. Stormborn Snuggler wrote in twice. His usual generous self. Israel shattered the ceasefire again today, Tuesday. Rafah stays sealed. 9 civilians martyred without cause. Trump smiles in Tel Aviv while babies die in Gaza. This is not defense. It is indiscriminate attack. A revolution isn't optional now. It's overdue. Of course, depends on what you mean by revolution and where. I'm for a peaceful revolution here in America, so we're not controlled by the donor class anymore. He also wrote in, so it's actually true Israeli kids are brainwashed. Nurit Peled Elhanan exposed 17 school books that erase Palestine, glorify supremacy, and teach hate. This is fascist indoctrination, a rogue state raising occupiers, not citizens. Enough silence. Do they teach Israeli kids to hate Palestinians? Of course they do. Do they teach them that they greater Israel is supposed to be theirs and God promised it to them? And of course they do. Who are you kidding? Who are you kidding? I mean, there's people here in America that haven't been to Israel in forever, or they just go on a little tourist trip that's carefully manufactured, and they have this angelic view of Israel that isn't anywhere near reality. Right now, unfortunately, the majority of Israeli people are bathing in hate for Palestinians, and so I mean, Jesus, how many of them can you kill? And still, in the middle of a genocide, say more. So that's a giant problem. Look, peace rescues everything. Once you get to peace, then people start to mellow out, and you begin to regain the Jewish culture that I know and love, and that I grew up with here in America, and that I think is beautiful. But right now, that isn't what's happening in Israel at all. Lady AF writes in a YouTube member section, I listened to Michael Jackson's We've Had Enough and Palestine Don't Cry again last night. My God, those are powerful songs. Of course they are. That's why Sony buried them on behalf of Israel. What a strange country we live in, where Sony, a Japanese company, is so scared of Israel in America that when the #1 music artist in the world puts out a song just sympathizing with Palestinians as human beings, they're like, no, bow your head to Israel, and they crush the song. And then they go, oh, we have no control. We have no control. That's anti-Semitic to say that. Okay, then why does Sony kill that song? Come on, it's incredibly obvious. Idiocracy Genius in the TYT.com member section says, maybe we should give Ukraine back their nukes that were taken when we agreed to protect them. As I've said before, that's not that bad an idea. You just say, hey, Russia, we're outside the war. You guys deal with it, but Ukraine, here's your nukes back. Anyway, I know, dangerous idea. We should at least threaten it. Exit Puppy says, my friends at TYT, thank you for the sanity you bring me every day. You are a strong source of hope for me. But John Campbell Reese has a critique. He says, sorry, Cenk, if you think the defense of Ukraine from the Moscovian hegemony is a war for Israel, you've drunk the Kool-Aid. No, brother, two things can be true at the same time. So yeah, I hate that Russia invaded Ukraine and is taking territory. In fact, in a way that is very similar to Israel taking territory. So I'm not in favor of Russia doing that. But how long are we going to stay in this war? And by the way, does the Israeli lobby support us staying in the war longer? Yes. Are they happy that the Russians are occupied in Ukraine? Yes. So both of those things can be true at the same time. And if you say for you you are so worried about Russian aggression that outweighs it, fair enough. We all make our own calculus. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about these ICE raids because they're getting even more intense and more American citizens are getting caught up in them. Lowering standards and eliminating some training requirements for ICE agents has translated into some violent incidents, some of which have impacted American citizens, along with, of course, undocumented immigrants. So in video captured in Chicago on October 10th, ICE agents are seen violently arresting a literal local reporter for WGN TV Chicago. Her name is Debbie Brockman. Let's take a look at what that was like.
Sir, what's your name? What's your name?
Debbie Brockman, I work for WGN. Let them know.
I got you. Yep. Debbie Browning? Brockman, WGN.
You're proud of yourself.
Do you guys want to share your names too, or just gonna cover your face?
Could cover your face a couple years. A real thing.
Okay, Mr. Condemnation. Yeah. Oh my God.
This is ridiculous. Honestly.
Yeah.
Stop.
Good job. I hope you learn yourself.
Get the down. Come here. Alexa, let's go. No, this is some bullshit.
And as you saw in the end of that video, the ICE agents then crashed into the back of that SUV and just drove away. And there have been more and more of these accidents. Now, later, the Department of Homeland Security said that the reporter was arrested because she allegedly threw objects at an unmarked Border Patrol vehicle. Now, I thought that was suspicious from the jump because, look, I just got to keep it honest. Like, you look at that woman, she's a literal local news reporter. She doesn't look like the type of person who's like an activist looking to get into trouble or throw objects at law enforcement or ICE officials. And later, it appears that my hunch was confirmed because she was later released without any charges. According to her lawyers, Brockman was held in federal custody for about 7 hours before being released. And that it doesn't end there, right? Like there are more and more of these stories coming out. And part of the reason why is because there are no brakes on this car. When you cut training, when you essentially tell ICE agents they can, use whatever force they want to use, they're going to carry that out. And ICE also arrested an Army veteran who happens to be an American citizen. His name is George Retes, and he was arrested at the Camarillo Cannabis Farm in California. This happened over the summer. I believe it was in, July. July 10th is when this ICE raid happened. Now, look, that story is nuanced because that ICE raid found that the marijuana farm was employing undocumented underage workers. And so I'm not in favor of child labor, whether it's undocumented or not. So, when it comes to legitimate ICE operations, great. But the problem is what they are doing is not legal. It's not legitimate. They're arresting and detaining American citizens in some cases. Here you have an American veteran who was arrested and detained for 3 days without any charges or access to an attorney or contact with his family. Retes has said that he complied with officers' directions at the scene and that he identified himself as a United States citizen and a veteran while attempting to reach his security guard job. He wrote that agents did not verify his identification before detaining him and that he missed family events while in custody. In a post on his newsletter, and an op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle. He said ICE officers used tear gas, broke his car window, and applied physical force, including kneeling on him while he complied with their instructions. And there's even more. A teen in Texas was reported missing by his family after ICE detained him. He's a 15-year-old by the name of Emmanuel Gonzalez Garcia. He has autism. His family thought he had been kidnapped. His autism is so severe that he has the cognitive function of a 4 or 5-year-old. Now, he was detained after he walked away or wandered off as his mom was selling fruit. She has a fruit stand. She's selling fruit. He walks away. At that point, ICE officials detained him. They did not notify his family, which is why they thought something was wrong, something was wrong, but that he had been kidnapped or something terrible had happened. The US Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement explained that Houston police had found a minor that they had picked up who claimed to be homeless and from another country. Well, he's not homeless. And, later I said that it helped Houston police place Gonzalez Garcia with the US Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement. But the agency deals with refugees and unaccompanied minors. He's not an unaccompanied minor. And again, the fact that his mother didn't know where he was, the fact that the Department of Homeland Security never reached out to his family members to inform them of where he was. And by the way, he was detained on early October. Sorry about that. He was detained October 3rd, I believe. Yes, October 3rd is when he was detained. The mother has not seen him since. Has only been able to have one 30-minute phone call with him. There's so many other cases, Cenk. It's crazy. So the US Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement explained that Houston police had found the minor and had picked up who claimed to be a guy who claimed to be homeless and from another country. And he's not homeless. Yeah. They didn't even do the basic fact gathering as they were detaining this guy. This kid, this 15-year-old with autism.
So look, we know why this is happening. Stephen Miller. So he's obsessed with beating Barack Obama's record for deportations. So he's giving a quota to ICE. So they're rounding people up, whether they're Americans, not Americans, danger, not a danger. They're not double checking anything. They're smashing people's cars, arresting reporters, and it's deeply stupid. So look, I hate it because it attacks these innocent people that did not have it coming, right? We all believe the same thing. There's 75% of the country, right? So and Rogan talks about it all the time. We asked for you to arrest the criminal undocumented immigrants. Apparently, Rogan didn't understand that there aren't that many of them, right? There's a good number. You should arrest them all and you should kick them out, right? But it's not a giant number. Most of the deportations that Obama did were at the border, where he just turned them back. So, and back then there weren't sanctuary cities. It gets complicated, right? But it was much easier for Obama to do it. If you're gonna try to break that record, you're gonna have to grab a whole bunch of people who are innocent. You're gonna have to crush due process. You're gonna have to go and get people who are actually undocumented, but have been living here for 20 years, and then you're gonna leave their kids behind. They're American citizens. On and on it goes. And all this stuff makes 75% of the country deeply uncomfortable. So Trump had it. When he kicked out the undocumented criminals, his polling on immigration was through the roof. Now that he's doing this, he's lost 75% of the country. So he's got his base that loves it. They can't get enough of it. And I'm not talking about all of his voters at all. Rogan voted for him. A lot of the independent podcasters voted for him. A lot of independents voted. They don't want this. So his extreme base, I don't know if it's 25% of the country or 25% of his base. Yeah, they love it. Stephen Miller loves it. And apparently Trump loves it. But it's driving down his immigration numbers. So if you're somebody like me who doesn't like seeing that happen to innocent people, you don't like it. If you're a Republican or you're a Trump fan, it's destroying his numbers. So do you like it? Okay, and I know some of you will say, yeah, absolutely. They got no business here. We should have rounded them up a long time ago, kick out 10, 12 million people. I don't care if they're kids or grandmothers, but the majority of the country does not agree. This looks super wrong and immoral.
I mean, if you're okay with a federal government agency having like unlimited power to terrorize whoever the hell they want, including American citizens, without even asking a single question about their identity, about their immigration status, about whether or not they're citizens. Okay, but don't cry if your community is impacted by this, or people that you personally know are being impacted by this. Because since when did members of the political party who are super weary, for good reason, about concentrated power in government, all of a sudden in favor of essentially giving a government agency unlimited power to do as they want? And by the way, Cenk, you're right that you do have this influence from Stephen Miller. There's no question about that. But remember, there was also this influx of taxpayer money that went to Border Patrol and to ICE as a result of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. And so now you have this government agency that's on a hiring spree. And in order to hire as many ICE agents as possible and as quickly as possible, they have essentially done away with some of the standards and some of the training that ICE agents previously had to get. So let me just give you the numbers in regard to the Big Beautiful Bill. Let's go to graphic 8 here. Congress this summer passed legislation giving ICE $76.5 billion in new money to help speed up the pace of deportations. That's nearly 10 times the agency's current annual budget. Nearly 30 billion is for new staff. 30 billion is no joke. That's a lot of money. And so what the agency is doing in an attempt to sweeten the deal for anyone thinking about applying to be an ICE agent is they're giving them up to $50,000 in hiring bonuses. But on top of that, the Trump administration has scaled back training and other standards for ICE officers or ICE recruits. And we are seeing the negative impact of that. So for instance, in August, ICE removed age restrictions for new applicants as part of their push to hire more agents. Originally, the agency said that applicants must be at least 21 years old and generally not yet 37 for the criminal investigator position and not yet 40 to become a deportation officer. Now there are no age caps, and anyone who's at least 18 years old as opposed to 21 years old can apply to be an ICE agent. Also, Caleb Vitello, who runs training for ICE, says it has cut Spanish language requirements to reduce training by 5 weeks. I feel like the Spanish language requirements and the training that comes along with that might be useful if you're deporting people, some of whom might not speak English, but I don't know. That's just me. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah. So look, $50,000 is a huge signing bonus. So it's going to bring in a lot of people, whether they're qualified or not. And then are they going to use DEI to hire people? You're not qualified. Who cares? Just come on in. As long as you're willing to grab up random Latinos in the streets. That's kind of a reverse DEI, I guess. So look, other reasons people are upset about this is it comes with an attack on free speech. For example, that reporter that was arrested. So attacks on the press over and over again. Obviously, people are discomforted by the mask, no badges, unmarked vehicles. And that's not America, and it makes no sense for them to wear masks like that. It leads to more thuggery. That's why the Klan wore masks. It's a bad idea. And there's no health emergency right now. They're obviously doing it for one sole purpose, which is to hide their identity. Why do they have to hide their identity? Because they're doing things that are wrong. Not because they're worried that the WGN reporter and the autistic kid are gonna somehow find out who they are, dox them, and come to their homes. No, that's just a made up excuse to be able to do worse things because you have anonymity. And lastly, look, I heard this story from in my personal life, but we've also covered very similar stories on the show that were in the news. But so talking to someone who's Latino, I asked him, what do you think? I've been asking a bunch of people these days, do you think that Trump's gonna lose the Latino vote? Because look, you gotta talk to people in the community. Polling is one thing, online comments is another thing, but talking to people in real life also gives you, yes, it's anecdotal evidence, but oftentimes very helpful. Like for example, if you talk to normal people about Biden back in 23 and 24, 100% of them would have told you too old, right? So anyways, Trump guy gets pulled over by ICE. He's an American citizen and he's like, I voted for Trump. I voted for Trump. The ICE guy doesn't care. He's got a quota to make. So he rounds him up and throws him in the, into detention. And then presumably he got out at some point because he's an American citizen. But when you do this, my guess, we'll see if it starts to show up in the polling more and more, is that you're gonna lose a giant chunk of the Latino vote that you had won after so many decades of trying to get more Latinos to vote for Republicans. You're gonna lose them in the span of 2 years, all going back, because then now they think, well, the Democrats are right. Trump and the Republicans, they said we're gonna target us, and they did target us. And they didn't care that we were Americans. They didn't even care if we voted for Trump. That is a terrible political strategy. Point.
I agree. I totally agree. Because there's profiling happening. So if you look vaguely Latino or vaguely, like someone who's not a waspy white American, I just feel like these American citizens keep getting detained, including that veteran, right? Obviously, he's Latino, but he's an American citizen. He got profiled anyway. So anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, I do want to talk a little bit about something good that media outlets are doing today in pushing back against unconstitutional requirements that the Pentagon wants to implement or impose on journalists who want to do reporting on foreign policy and what the Pentagon is up to. So that and more coming up. Don't miss it.
All right, let's go to comments on Twitch. Only Dead on the Inside says, the issues that Ukraine have is their nukes for our protection. They could have kept them and Russia would have left them alone. We gave our word. I think that grabs something. Not to mention we stand up for those who are weaker, and Ukraine was attacked by Russia. Obama should have taken action back in 2014. Unfortunately, he was too weak. So look, I 100% acknowledge that the Ukraine issue is complicated and people come out on different sides, and all these points are legitimate. And so it's not an easy answer one way or another. But I hate that Russia invaded them, but that war has to end at some point. And I think that Trump is trying to end it. And so I am giving him some credit for that. Okay, Telegram Unlimited said, seriously getting sick of Cenk being right all the time. That's funny, especially when it comes to Palestinians being betrayed by Israel, breaking the ceasefire. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Started out rough, but then it ended well. Okay. Panic on Funkatron, now TYT.com member. TYT shirt idea. Journalism is not a crime. Similar to skateboarding is not a crime t-shirts. Not a bad idea. I'll have the thugs at shop TYT.com look into it. Now I feel bad using the word thug for them. Anyway, Michael Nathan says, please have Ben Cohen on his free Ben and Jerry's campaign. Yeah, I'm helping that campaign behind the scenes. I love that campaign. So Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield are American heroes. And Jerry left Ben and Jerry's in protest because Unilever won't let Ben and Jerry's ice cream protest Israel because they bought it and they were supposed to have a deal where Ben and Jerry still had a lot of autonomy in running it, and Unilever, the parent company, has taken that away from them. So Jerry resigned in protest, and Ben is still there fighting the good fight in so many ways, in ways that you don't even see behind the scenes. Love those guys. I mean, hippie peaceniks of the best sort, right? And our hats off to that generation that has been fighting for peace decade after decade and has always been principled no matter what. We love you for Ben and Jerry. Othostian wrote in, whoa, hold up, we're just gonna play Tucker lying about Zelenskyy being an unelected dictator without any pushback. Okay, I hear you, brother. So Zelenskyy was originally elected, and I've been a fan of Zelenskyy for a long time. I thought he's handled all of this to the best of his abilities, which is in a very, very difficult situation. But they did stop doing elections, and I know why they stopped doing elections. But I'm still bothered by the fact that they stopped doing elections, and I know it's kind of a no-win situation. So it is, that one's also a little bit complicated. But you're right, he was definitely originally elected. No money equals no justice says, I understand the families in Israel wanting the bodies of their loved ones. At the same time, what about the bodies in Gaza that will probably never be identified, not only from the bombing, but also from the cemeteries that were desecrated with bulldozers? Now, that's another great point. That's something that we covered here on TYT. No mainstream media, at least on television, covered that the Israelis were destroying all the cemeteries and in a way to desecrate the Palestinian graves, because that's what fascists do. That's what terrorists do. They just do it because just to rub it in innocent people's faces. So then we're all supposed to have tremendous sympathy for their dead that have not yet been recovered, largely because probably Israel buried them under the rubble. But I still do, because it's on us to be human and not fall into the Israeli trap of judging people based on religion or nationality. So we hope for everyone. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys. One quick comment from a YouTube member. Bijan Bahai says, yes to catharsis. Your rage is our rage. Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'll take some degree of pride in that. Thank you, brother. Anna.
All right, let's get to our next story.
We're setting clear rules at the Pentagon. We're not playing games. We're not allowing everybody to roam around the building. You know, that was the policy before, Peter. Yes, you can be in the press area, briefing room, but if you want to move around the building, you're going to have a badge. It's going to be clear. You're going to be escorted when you do so, and we have expectation that you're not soliciting classified or sensitive information. I think the American people see things like that as absolute common sense. The Pentagon press corps can squeal all they want. We're taking these things seriously. They can report. They just need to make sure they're following rules.
The try-hard Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, of course, but they like to call the Secretary of Defense, the Department of Defense, Department of War. Pete Hegseth is basically pushing a restrictive press policy, and anyone in the press who wishes to report from the Pentagon would essentially need to sign on to these restrictions. And I'm happy to report that there is a bipartisan list of news agencies that are not buying it and will not sign it, even though the deadline to do so is today. Now, the text of the DoD's pledge, which was released last month, states the following. Department of War remains committed to transparency to promote accountability and public trust. That's laughable. However, Department of War information must be approved for public release by an appropriate authorizing official before it is released, even if it is unclassified. So let me just be very clear. This is the government, the federal government, telling reporters that if they want to report from the Pentagon, if they want to be included in the press pool, they have to sign on to a system in which the government has to approve the reporting before the reporting happens. That's insane. That's crazy. Now, luckily, a lot of them are not buying it. According to the document, journalists who report on news outside of the explicit commands of the Pentagon could be deemed a security or safety risk. What are you going to do? You're going to call the reporters terrorists now? Yep. And they could have their credentials stripped. So the move from Hegseth was met with a lot of backlash, a lot of criticism from media corporations who say that this effort goes against the Constitution's guarantee of freedom of the press. Now, CNN is reporting that there are some revisions, or there were some revisions to the pledge after media lawyers met with DoD officials, but the revisions just were not enough for the journalists to feel comfortable signing on to it, and good for them because they're right. Last week, the Pentagon Press Association stated they appreciated that the revised policy issued Monday no longer asked journalists to express agreement to maintain access to Pentagon facilities. But the association said it still has serious concerns about the policy that appears to be designed to stifle a free press and potentially expose us to prosecution for simply doing our jobs. The revised policy expands the prohibitions on journalists from not just accessing unauthorized information, but also soliciting it. Soliciting or encouraging government employees to break the law falls outside the scope of protected news gathering activities, the policy said. Now, look, media outlets were told that they had until today, Tuesday, 5 p.m., to sign on, or they would essentially have to return their credentials and clear out the Pentagon. I would clear out the Pentagon so fast. Like, oh, wow, I'm not going to be able to sit in on the press briefings from the Pentagon spokespeople who just lie to our faces anyway. What will we do? So pretty much every media outlet has signaled that they are not going to sign this agreement, including, and pay close attention to how bipartisan this is, for lack of a better word. Newsmax, right wing, CNN, Reuters, the Associated Press, the New York Times, Washington Post, the Atlantic, NPR, and more. And while CNN has already stated that they would not agree to the restrictions, Fox News, NBC, ABC, CBS, and CNN have issued a joint statement earlier today, saying that today we join virtually every other news organization in declining to agree to the Pentagon's new requirements, which would restrict journalists' ability to keep the nation and the world informed of important national security issues. The policy is without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections. We will continue to cover the US military as each of our organizations has done for many decades, upholding the principles of a free and independent press. Only one outlet has agreed to the restrictions, and that's OAN. Former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, who now hosts a show on the network, stated in a post, "Frankly, I'm shocked these weren't already the rules. It's the Pentagon. OAN is happy to follow these reasonable conditions grounded in care for our national security." I could not disagree more with Matt Gaetz on this matter. Having the government control journalists means that we have state media, not actual free press or journalism that is protected by our First Amendment. Cenk.
So speaking of state media, I was talking to somebody that was familiar with the Chinese mainland, right? And knows folks who live there. And they said, totally unrelated to any of this, that, oh yeah, all that anybody watches in China is online videos. They never watch TV. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Why? Why do they never watch TV? And they said, well, because TV is controlled by state propaganda. So it's totally useless. Why would you bother listening to the propaganda that the government's putting out that you know is false? So you just go online instead, right? So that's what they're trying to turn this country into. So, and by the way, in a lot of ways, they've done that in a much more sophisticated way. But credit to the mainstream media here, at least they're fighting back against the Pentagon here and not bowing their heads. So I give them credit for that. And I think that, this is, again, unfortunately, the Israelification of our country. Why? Did Israel ask for this? No. To my knowledge, they have nothing to do with this. But CNN and other news organizations do run all of their stories about Israel through their Israel Bureau, and Israel either approves or doesn't approve before they run it. So to be fair to Hegseth and Trump and this administration, they must have thought, well, if all the news organizations are gonna have their news stories about Israel pre-approved by Israel, why can't they get pre-approved by us about stories about us? Well, it was never a good idea for them to allow Israel to do that either, right? So please stop adopting their terrible ideas. So I'm worried about that as well. But there might be a silver lining here, Anna, and you kind of hinted at it. Look, all these reporters are so obsessed with access, but that access is access to someone who has an agenda. And so almost all the leaks come from people who want to push an agenda, and the reporter then helps them with that agenda by not explaining why they got the leak and what the purpose of the leak is. And they hide that from their readers, and I think and their viewers, and I think it's a huge problem. So maybe if they stop obsessing about access journalism, they might actually be much better at covering the Pentagon.
I totally agree. Look, these government agency press conferences are useless. They really are. I mean, the whole point of the White House press secretary, for instance, whether you're talking about Karine Jean-Pierre or Caroline Leavitt, is to protect the administration, to defend the administration and its policies, and to provide cover for policies that have gone awry or has led to backlash among the American people. So I think it's important to take what government officials and spokespeople of these government agencies have to say into consideration and then fact check it. But for the most part, if you're just relying on being part of the Pentagon press pool in order to do your reporting on foreign policy, well, your reports are going to be dog crap. They just are. You have to do a lot more digging. And, Jeremy Scahill, I got to give him a shout out because he's been around for a while. He's an actual war reporter. He reported on the ground in various wars in the Middle East. And those are real journalists. Those are the people who gather the news, gather the facts, and put the reporting out there. If you're not doing that, I don't know how much credibility your war reporting or foreign policy reporting really has, to be honest.
Yeah. Last quick thing is, today I happen to randomly be reading about a former State Department spokesperson, Vedant Patel. And he used to act as an unofficial spokesperson, of course, for Israel instead of us. And now it turns out he's a registered foreign agent for Israel. Stop using these sources. They're already super biased and useless. They're just using you as a way to get out their message. Do some real journalism like Drop Site News, The Lever, and so many other wonderful independent outlets. All right, we're gonna do Operation Joy. So everybody stick around. This one's open to the public. And I got a couple super chats that just came in that are amazing. I want to share that with you as well. So we'll do all that when we return. Let's spread joy to the world. All right, guys, Cenk and Anna back on TYT. So normally what I'm doing Monday through Friday now is doing this crowdsourcing the revolution thing where we're trying to unite the left and the right. There's been wonderful progress already. I can't wait to tell you more about it tomorrow. Working on a couple of bills like the one to lower drug prices and trying to basically end the genocide as well. But we'll do those updates tomorrow at normal time, this time, right? But normally we do Operation Joy for just our members, but since we've opened up the rest of the bonus episodes for everyone, we're gonna open this one up too and try it for a while, see how it goes. And at the end, I'll tell you a personal story that I'll try to figure out by the time that we do it. Anyways, but before we do any of that, I normally would read a couple of comments left over from the show, and there's a couple super chats that are both generous and really interesting personal comments, so I wanna read those first. But as I'm doing that, if you have, if any of you out there have a story of something that brought you joy, write that in, okay, and I'll read it, and we'll spread joy around a little bit. If you have questions about, how do I deal with an issue? How do I get past it? How do I get to happiness, etc.? I'm crazy enough to try to answer those too. So have at it, also, write in now. All right, so Gus wrote in on Super Chat. I was beaten by 8 Zionist IDF terrorists/soldiers in Ramallah in my parents' house when I was 18. And they stopped from killing me only when they saw my dad's USA Army picture hung on the wall.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they stopped. They don't, do you think they care about what Americans think?
Maybe because
you think our government cares about our veterans or our soldiers when it comes to Israel, honestly? I mean, come on.
But Anna, that might have been from an earlier time where they had still a tiny bit of restraint left. Now they realize, oh no, America is our dog. They've now killed 9 Americans in the last 3 years, and the American response, both from Biden and Trump, have been, thank you very much, sir. May we please have another? And then they would send them multi-billion-dollar checks. And there's never any accountability. So now, Gus, I mean, thank God it happened to you earlier in a sense, right? I wish it hadn't happened to you at all, right? But if it happened now, they would almost certainly beat you to death. And the American government would do nothing, nothing at all. Nothing, it's a guarantee, because we've already seen it 9 different times. The American government goes, oh, Israel, we're so sorry. Thank you for murdering our citizens. I hope we didn't cause you much offense. Prove me wrong, by the way. Show me the American government having any accountability for all those murdered Americans in the West Bank and some in Gaza. Go ahead, none. Jack Glancy says, Bibi wants the war to go on for one reason, and that is survival. With the far right threatening to leave his coalition, he will not win the next election. Also, I believe this ICC still has a warrant, so losing his premiership leaves him vulnerable. Jack, that's a great point, and that is actually, you know how tough I am on mainstream media, but that is one point that the mainstream media does make from time to time, and they are correct about that, and you're correct about that. And so that's why all this talk of like, oh, maybe Netanyahu will get to peace. I mean, tell me you don't know anything about Israel without telling me you don't know anything about Israel. There's no chance of that because Ben-Gvir and Smotrich would leave the government and then they'd have to go to elections right away. And Netanyahu would lose the elections and then maybe go to jail because he's up on corruption charges. That's why Trump, in his speech to Knesset, asked them to pardon Netanyahu. So, you know, criminals of a, but what? Birds of a criminal flock together? I don't know. Feathers of a criminal flock together? We butchered that, okay. Edwin tried to help, but I was
Birds of a feather flock together.
But birds of a criminal flock together? I don't know, who cares?
Okay, let's move on, please.
All right, well now we move to Operation Joy.
Stop,
okay?
Lucius, please stop.
Okay, says the guy who was contributing, by the way. Anyways, Tugging the Tubin starts with a note for you, Anna. They say, hey Anna, I'm off to Italy and Slovenia next week. I'll take some pictures for you. It's a girl's trip. I've worked my ass off on a new job and need the break. Don't feel bad for Marty. He went on a guy's trip to see Sturgill Simpson at Red Rocks on consecutive nights. He does keep an aggressive concert calendar and I go along a lot. We support each other like that. Well, that's beautiful. I love that you guys support each other and that's why you're tugging the tubing together.
Come on, Cenk.
No,
Lucius, please stop.
No, they're Marty Beth. They're a combo of the husband and the wife, and that's their handle, Tugging the Tubin. For those who are unaware, so
never been to Slovenia, but enjoy Italy. It's amazing.
I'm not familiar with the work of Sturgill Simpson or Red Rocks. Red Rocks is the natural place in Colorado.
It's a concert venue.
Oh, it's a concert venue.
Yeah, it's amongst the mountains there.
Among the mountains. Okay.
Yeah, Red Rocks Amphitheater is a very well-known place for concerts.
You know me, I barely ever go to concerts. I don't know what to do. I went to a concert the other day, Eric Clapton for Palestine. Loved it, beautiful. But the whole time I was like, can I go out and get a hot dog and come right back? Right? And then people started dancing. I'm like, no, not for me. It's for other folks. All right, Velvet Jones writes in. Remember he had the story earlier about running a marathon in an ill-advised way, and we're like, what are you doing? Well, he wrote back in and said, quick follow-up to my marathon post. Does it make my decision a little less reckless if I came to represent? My wife's opinion mirrored Anna's in both substance and intensity. I'll leave it to the fellow members of Team Joy to offer judgment. And then he includes a picture. He wore his Team Joy t-shirt. Not guilty. Nice. Okay, Velvet Jones. You forget that people's champion. Nice job, Casper.
This was the comment, or the person who shared how they were in pain but kept running anyway.
Yes.
Bad. Don't do that. Look, you got that one body, okay? Be nice to it. Be nice to my friend Velvet Jones. Wait, that's not the person. Yeah, Velvet Jones.
Yeah. So no, as long as you wore a Team Joy shirt and people saw it for 26 miles and you spread joy around, I'm in. ShopTYT.com for that shirt, by the way. Okay, Wedge writes in, Cenk, I sometimes take it, oh no, quoting me, Cenk, I sometimes take it too far. Anna, somewhat muffled. You sure do. That happened on the show the other day. Anna is sort of Cenk's straight man in this bit. What joy you both bring me.
That's so funny. Yeah. I'll just leave it there. Yeah.
All right, I'll leave it there too, okay? Anyways, Meow, this is now my new favorite handle and I told my daughter about it. Meowser's Claws, the established meownt, writes in, for those of you who don't know, Meowser is my cat. Now the Israelis will target him. Anyway, I captured the supermoon from my telescope last night. Whoever we are and whatever the circumstances, every human has looked up at the same moon and has always relied on its predictable cycles. Joy is knowing we all have the same humbling place in this vast universe together. Okay, Meowsers, I couldn't agree more with you. Okay, and there's a beautiful moon taken by the telescope. So, okay, this is a typical Cenk thing, and then Anna can have her reaction, be frustrated by me or whatever. So, look, I think about that all the time. In fact, it's kind of almost part of my daily mantra. When you look at the Earth from the perspective of the rest of the universe, the Earth is microscopic. You can't find it in a telescope if you're on so many parts of the universe. Like we're so small. We're beyond microscopic. And then humans are tiny little ants, amoebas on this tiny little planet, right? So
except for Turkey. Turkey's different. Turkey is big. There's no country that's even big.
Boom. There's no universe that's even big.
That's literally a thing that Turkey says, that they're the biggest. There's no country that's even big.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the post games or the old school, we got old school tonight too, by the way, at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Yeah,
all that's stolen territory though.
Yeah, so that's a chant that we had at Turkish American Day parades that I was puzzled by even as a kid. It goes Türkiye en büyük, başka büyük yok. That means Turkey is the biggest. There's no other country that's even big. Okay.
It's super creative. I love it.
It's such a Turkish thing to chant, right?
It is. It sure is.
Yeah. So anyways, I get it. Earth is big and there's no other planet that's even big. But nevertheless, we're not. We're microscopic. And so why do I take joy out of that? Because guys, what are we sweating it for, right? Like, you want to fight for others, you want to fight for justice. I like to think we do that a little bit. And that's great, that's wonderful. And a lot of you care so much about the world and about each other. That's beautiful, I love that. But don't stress yourself out so much, especially about yourself, right? Which is what we all do. Just remember, you're a tiny little ant, no one cares. The universe isn't like, oh my God, what's gonna happen to Bob? Oh my God, I'm gonna judge Bob. Hey, everybody, all the gods gather together, all the universe, all the planets, all the aliens gather together. Look at what Bob's up to. That son of a bitch. Stop it, Bob. We're all judging. No, we're ants to them. No one cares. So stop stressing yourself out so much. Go ahead, Ann.
Me? Okay, liberty isn't.
No, I was expecting you to go, or something. To my finding joy in our insignificance.
I get annoyed with you when you get into you get into a trance and it's like a screaming trance and there's no way to break it and it goes on forever. We did 6 stories today. Anyway, Liberty Isn't Free writes it and says, my Operation Joy story. I got to spend time with my family this week that I hadn't seen in a while, and we got to make all our favorite family recipes. Oh my God, that sounds so good. It felt like Christmas without the decorations. Bonus just saw a reel with toddlers on Instagram who learned about hugs today. That's super sweet. Also, food is love. Like getting together with family, whether it's barbecuing, making like traditional family recipes, it's the best. And at some point, you're not going to have all of your family members with you anymore. So enjoy it as much as you can, savor it. It's the best. Let's go to.
Hold on. Let me throw in a couple here. First of all, Claire Max Place, thank you for joining. We appreciate that. That was on YouTube. Octo Squiddy says on Twitch, criminal birds of a feather flock together. Gosh, do I have to do everything?
Yes.
Thank you, Octo Squiddies. We definitely needed help on that one. Let's keep it real, or certainly I did. And on YouTube,
although Els Bells, hold on, sorry to interrupt you. Els Bells, I think maybe one-upped. There's a little bit of a one-up situation. Jailbirds of a feather.
Oh, nicely done. Well, before we were crowdsourcing the revolution, now we're crowdsourcing jokes. So, and we know what? We workshopped that one and got it to be way better. So thank you guys. Maybe you guys should host a show. Wait a minute. Okay, but you kind of do actually. So anyway, let's go to Alison Alt. My kitty Suki is laying next to me having a deep kitty dream. Heart emoji.
Oh,
beautiful.
It's the best. It's the best when pets have dreams, dogs and cats. By the way, a good couple friend that me and my husband have, it's a weird way of framing it, but a couple that we're good friends with, they just got a kitten and oh my gosh, like the purring is medicine. Like I love the sound of a cat's purr and it's just like the cutest cat and she's super warm. So she's like enamored with me, I think, because when we were visiting recently, she kept coming up to me and I was just like, yeah, she loves me. Her name's Gemma, which is like the cutest name. Anyway, and Charlie, when he dreams, he like barks a little bit, but it's like a cute little low tone bark. And I'm really wondering, like, what is he dreaming? Who is he telling off? What did they do wrong? You know, Charlie can be fierce when he wants to be.
So Meowsers is a super interesting cat. That's why we like him and kept him. We were foster parenting him. And then he'll do these crazy tricks and like parquet off the wall and etc. Right? But he has a downside. He likes to scratch and bite. So folks who don't know, like Jesus was over the other day, right? Our legendary, the internet director, the Steven Spielberg of the internet. And he's like, oh, hey, Meowsers, I was thinking, no. And Meowsers is like, hey, come to Papa, come to Kitty. Wow.
Oh my God, really?
I think he
That's
actually
amazing.
bit him. He bit him. He likes to bite more than scratch. He's just like, whoa, what the?
Same.
Oh, okay, I heard that.
Okay. So, and then cats do this thing, and it's unfortunate because they'll sometimes start to purr, but if they're feeling real nice, they'll start doing, I don't know what it's called, but they start doing this thing with their claws where they like sink their claws into you and like, it's almost like they're kneading bread or dough for bread. And it's painful and it's unfortunate, but you like the purring. So you're like, oh, can I withstand this? Usually I can't.
Yeah. So I'm the only one who's gotten them to stop biting and scratching me because you have to be vigilant. So the minute he does it, I go grab the vacuum cleaner and I go, and he hates the vacuum cleaner. He's like, ah, and he freaks out and runs away, right? So I did that enough times where he's like, oh, I get it. If I scratch that son of a gun, he gonna vacuum cleaner me. Okay, all right, I'm gonna leave him alone. Anyway, Jack Glancy writes in on Super Chat, something that brings me joy is the annual cheese rolling competition in the UK. I don't know why, but people running after cheese makes me laugh. Now it made us laugh, Jack. See, this is how you spread joy in the world. So you know what it trips me out, and none of you are gonna be surprised by it, but I've been to Canada a couple times recently, so I started watching it because I'm like, they actually watch this. It's not just some Olympic BS. Curling. And they're like super into it. They're like, Washington. That's the one where they sweep the ice and try to get the thing into the right exact place that you only see in the Olympics. But in Canada, that's real. They actually do it. Okay, so on TV, they're like Washington. With the, have you ever seen it, Anna? You know what I'm talking about?
I have seen it. It looks fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then the other day, was this also Canada? I don't know. No, this was Germany. Somebody sent it to me, a video. They have a competition where they blow a ping pong ball from one glass to another until they complete the entire maze. So there's two ladies there going, and then of course it's enrapturing. I couldn't stop watching.
I mean, it's good for lung capacity, so there's that.
I guess. All right, Cognizant Reconstruction on YouTube. Poor Cenk, you got to get out of the studio more. Any concert at Red Rocks would end up as a story for Operation Joy. Well, you don't know me, brother, but I hear you, and thank you, and you're right, I should. But the upside of that is that the Israelis got nothing on me. I never leave my office. So they're like, when is this guy gonna do something wrong? Anyways, and they wrote in one more time. My joy this week, birthday with peeps in my mossy meadow, eating dinner with stars, twinkly lights, just bought a forest, first time in 40 years. I usually take the day for myself, which is also my happy place. Oh my God, that sounds amazing. A mossy meadow, eating dinner with the stars and twinkly lights, sounds fantastic. All right, here's another Cenk thing that I do. So the other day, I went to a really nice mall that they have here, outdoor mall in LA. And I just sat they have public seating, you could get ice cream and restaurant, different things, but it's public. And I sat there and I just crowd watched for a while. It was my moment of Zen. And I thought, because it's close to where I'm staying now, and I was like, I'll treat this like my backyard. And you know what? Am I not merciful? I'll allow everyone else to come to the mall.
Oh, wow.
But you know what? Any of you can go to that beautiful place and do the same exact thing, like you own the place. Because in public areas, you kind of do. It's public. It's yours, whether that's a beautiful park somewhere out in the woods or in the canyons or in the mountains, etc., or in your local neck of the woods where there's something beautiful. You are the public. You own that land. So enjoy it. Act like a boss. Sit wherever you like. I mean, don't get in other people's way and don't bother other people, but soak it in. Why not? And I'm like, okay, look at this gorgeous backyard I have. Went to Beverly Hills a couple of weeks ago, did the same thing. Like,
Can I hang out in your backyard whenever I want? It's my backyard now.
Well, that's not public, but we can make an exception. Just watch out for meowsers.
I can tame her.
Others have thought the same thing, and him. But anyway.
Look, when my mom was in the hospital, I was watching her terrorist dog, and I mean that in every sense of the word, Bruno, and undisciplined little schemer, just disaster of epic proportions. By the time I was done with him, he was a good boy, but he's back with my mom now, not a good boy. He's so bad, he's so naughty. Okay, so not. Charlie was not having any of it, wanted nothing to do with Bruno. And I love dogs. It's like, it takes a lot for me to say something negative about a dog, but Bruno, terrorist.
Charlie.
We call him Osama Bruno Laden.
Okay, that's hilarious. Charlie, meanwhile, is thinking, we don't talk about Bruno. No.
He does not. He does not want to talk about Bruno.
Okay.
I remember at one point my mom was like, did Charlie warm up to Bruno? Do they play? I'm like, no, they don't play. Charlie's smart and well-behaved.
That's funny. Christina Elisa Brown writes in on Super Chat. After major surgery and so much pain, TYT chat has been my joy. The prayers and support, thank you so much, guys. You all give me comfort, love, peace, and blessings. That's a beautiful message. And yeah, Young Turks chat, you're awesome. Thank you. Thank you for not just for us, but for supporting each other and for giving comfort to each other and giving joy to one another. Love you for it. Let's go to YouTube again. Kowant Gill, thank you for joining. Thank you for hitting the join button. This is normally what we do in Operation Joy, and it's fun, right? Mateo writes in, here's good news, 2 weeks old, but only saw it last night because I'm consumed with political news. There was a breakthrough in Huntington's disease research, slowing it down by 75%. Early, but wow. Yeah.
I knew that RFK would have some wins.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, obviously. That's amazing. I llove that.
Yeah, that's amazing news. And guys, so that's a great analogy here. Excuse the Israel topic for 1 second in Operation Joy, because it's an important point. So I love modern science and modern medicine, and it saved my life. I've told that story before. You know what? I'll do that as the story of the day for the members at the end. Do about 5 minutes on that and how it's modern medicine saved my life. It's been a little bit of a gruesome story, but do I want big pharma ripping us off by not allowing us to negotiate drug prices? No. So I'm very, very frustrated with the drug companies' lobbying arms. That doesn't mean I hate the drugs they make, which oftentimes save our lives.
And sometimes can be a good time. I'm just kidding.
Well, that's also true, but a different drug, Anna, different. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But same thing for Israel.
Dude, I gotta say, we have injected Israel into like almost every discussion today, which is kind of amazing.
You're totally right. I'm guilty as charged today. Okay. But here I'm trying to make a point where just because we're frustrated or I'm frustrated with the Israeli lobby doesn't mean we don't like Israelis, right? Like Israel can, I mean, it's got to recover a little bit from the state that it's in, right? But of course, like they're human beings just like everyone else. We just need to help them snap out of it. It's not about hating a people, it's not about hating drugs. It's not about hating oil, although oil does do significant damage, right? But it is about making sure those lobbies don't control our government. That's all. Okay, now back to Joy. Back to Joy.
Can I read Savannah's comment?
Yes,
I'm so
definitely.
happy for Savannah. Good news, Operation Joy. Earlier this summer, I announced, and then Cenk announced about losing and finding a new job. Here's the update. I got a promotion and raise last week at the same job. Savannah, you're taking us out to dinner. Yeah. That's awesome.
In the
Cenk,
mossy
take some
meadow under the
notes.
stars with the sleeping kitten. Okay, we combine all these joy stories. It's gonna be like the most joyous thing that ever happened. But congrats, Savannah. That's awesome. We're super proud of you. Jen wrote in on YouTube. I do that all the time. My neighborhood's my house. I love Brooklyn. Yeah, why not? And so you go to the park in Brooklyn. I do it in Central Park. Guess who owns Central Park? I do. Good news. So do you. So go do anything you like. Well,
New York is kind of growing on me. That fall weather, like I think I might. I don't like how crowded and busy it is, but I feel like if you have the means, which I don't, to do up New York the right way, it's like the best place to be. Like if you're wealthy, living in New York must be amazing because you can afford a nice place that's got room, maybe offers a little bit of outdoor space with privacy. If you live close to, oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. The park. Central Park, Jesus. Yeah, Central Park is amazing. Central Park isn't just like a little park, okay? It's not a little weenie park, it's a huge park. And like, you can ride your horses in the park if you want to. You can do bird watching, but don't have your dog off a leash. Like there's so many things to do in Central Park. Anyway, I don't know, Cenk. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're seeing it wrong. So New York's beautiful in its ways, and I love visiting, right? But first of all, if you want to enjoy the fall weather and you're in that neck of the woods, go to Jersey. Jersey's way better. Pennsylvania is way better because they have much more foliage, way more trees. But the place to do it really right, and here I'll stop being a homer and tell you, like, this is New England. You go to New England area, oh, you're never gonna see anything more beautiful than New England in the fall. So
I've never been and I really want to go because I've heard the same thing. I really want to experience New England. I really want to experience Portland, Maine. I've only been in the state of Maine once for Tucker Carlson's podcast, but he lives in a rural part. I landed in Portland and it just seemed really beautiful. Like I want to see this country. Like there's so many states I've never been to. I've always wanted to do like a cross country trip. It takes a lot more planning, a lot more strategizing, but I think that might be like something I do after I visit Italy one more time.
Okay, so I'm gonna power through the rest of these because we gotta go. But But you should definitely go, and if you're in the New England area, enjoy the fall, okay? We all wish we were there. So last one from Twitch is Real saying, my joy, Mariners are well on their way to their first ever appearance in the World Series. You're supposed to anti-jinx that. They're only, we did that on last Old School, explained what that is. Anyway, they're the only Major League Baseball team to never make it, and as a lifetime fan, it's shocking. The entire state is buzzing at the moment, LOL. I believe it. I hated the Mariners growing up. I was a Yankees fan, and they beat us in the playoffs once or twice, and despised them ever since. But hey, good luck to you guys. And since I don't watch baseball anymore, you're free to love the Mariners. Bigger Picture says, Joy Talk. Today, my MAGA brother and I talked for 3 hours. We debated as always real hard, but as always at the end, we say I love you and see you in 2 weeks at the family event. Family first and proud of it. Love it. Nothing wrong with debating, fighting, agreeing, disagreeing, etc. But yeah, family first. So awesome, love that story. Pseudo Dragon says, wait, Clapton, one of the biggest races in the UK, did a benefit for Palestine? Well, look, guys, I'm in a forgiving state of mind for anyone who's in favor of Palestine. In fact, Roger Waters was there, and Roger Waters and us have fought before, right? Online.
He said I'm old.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, given.
See, there she goes again. Okay, hold on. We're supposed to be forgiving. Okay.
No, I don't care at all. Like, whatever. By the way, I was on a panel with Aaron Mate yesterday, and obviously we're on the same side because we're, discussing Israel and the ceasefire and all of that. Whatever. I actually don't hold on to grudges. I used to be a grudge holder. I let it go. Like, life is too difficult to hold grudges and hold on to like anger.
Yeah. Aaron and Max Blumenthal were also at that concert, and I said hi to Aaron in a different place. I don't mind saying hi to them. Look, man, Eric Clapton has said questionable things. Roger Waters has said questionable things. I don't know. I've probably said questionable things. Okay,
totally.
You're for freeing Palestine. Great. Welcome aboard. Love to have you. Okay. Wang Jun says, I have a joy story for next week I can't wait to share. And the cool thing is TYT actually plays a tiny role in it. Oh, okay, I like that teaser for next week. So we'll do that. And the last couple here, Kaj said, Cenk, you're not a beautiful snowflake. You're a random carbon speck. I agree.
It's true.
And I enjoy being random carbon specks. Another Radical Dragon said, I had a friend who was a former Navy SEAL Vietnam. One of his favorite sayings was, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have treated my body better. Yeah, well, that's got an upside. At least you live long, right? And last one is Buddy X Lacondo says, the world is a crappy, depressing place, but I will still be able to take joy tonight in watching TYT, chilling in bed with my wife, reading a book called The Ottomans about Cenk's homeland, and Josh Johnson has his weekly YouTube special tonight, Small Joys in Life. All right, beautiful, love it. And when you said you were reading a book called Ottomans, I thought could go either way. Could be about the empire or could be about furniture. It's the funny thing about why they randomly named it. It's not random though. My sister knows the story. I'll find the story and I'll tell you guys why the little footstool is called an ottoman next time. I'm positive my sister knows it. Anyways, Anna, did I tell you I ran into a Jordanian flight attendant who said, at this point, things have gotten so bad in the Middle East, we're rooting for the Turks to come back. No comment. Okay, anyways, all right, we're out of time. Anna's gonna go. I'm gonna tell you a cute little story about how I almost died. So members, stay right here. Casper, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you soon.
Yep.